Temperatures not far from average, 7 to 10 Celsius. And the sunshine reappears there across western Scotland, having seen the cloud fill in overnight. And that clear slot remains overnight with a frost here, with temperatures in some sheltered parts of the Highlands dipping well below freezing. And the rain in the southeast tends to transfer westwards, so some showery activity coming into the southwest as well as Wales, leaving clear spells in the far southeast and a frost here. But elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover and further showers continuing. And after a frost-free start, actually temperatures are going to remain at around 5 to 9 degrees for much of the day. Some brighter spells coming in at times for northern and eastern England, but it's here where the showers will continue to pile through, drying up further west, and there'll be, well, plenty of sunny spells for western Scotland, some western and southwestern, as well as southern coasts of England and Wales. Through the night on Wednesday night, again, we'll see some clear spells towards the south as well as western Scotland. 1 or 2 clear spells for Northern Ireland, where we get the clear spells, temperatures dipping below freezing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and staying frost-free. Into the weekend, most places stay cloudy, with average temperatures turning cold in the far north.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 12 noon, you're with GB News Live. I'm Mark Longhurst, and coming up for you this afternoon, the desperate search for a tiny baby after 54 days on the run. The missing couple, Constance Martin and Mark Gordon, found in Brighton last night, but their infant still missing. The couple have reportedly provided no information to police. Now, a massive search is underway in the Sussex seaside city and on the exposed high ground of the South Downs nearby. We'll have the latest from Brighton with our security editor Mark White following the intensive police operation. Can the Brexit bonanza pay off, with Rishi Sunak seemingly achieving what his predecessors failed? A deal for Northern Ireland. Today, the Prime Minister is in Belfast trying to build on the Windsor framework, but senior figures in the DUP still wary of its shaky foundations. Ian Paisley Jr. saying it simply doesn't cut the mustard. We'll have the very latest with our political editor in Belfast. And some empty shelves might be the least of your worries as food price inflation rockets to a record high, 17.1%. It could make your annual food bill higher by £811. We'll be breaking down the costs and see what it means for us at home. And as ever, get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We want to hear from you on all of the issues. Before that, latest news headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thanks very much and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 12. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner, Mark Gordon, went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to a male confinement. The Prime Minister has praised the Windsor framework, saying he's over the moon with the new deal. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing free trade across the UK. However, the deal does still allow for some oversight by the European Court of Justice, and the DUP are now analysing the details. But Mr Sunak says it's a great building block.
Glad that the Windsor framework delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. It absolutely ensures the smooth flow of goods around our UK internal market. It protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, making sure everything is the same for people as it should be, and crucially, it safeguards sovereignty. That's what the Windsor framework delivers, and now is the time for everyone to study the detail and come together so we can move forward and build a positive future for Northern Ireland.
Grocery price inflation has reached a new record high of 17.1%. Analyst Kantar says this means an average increase of £811 to yearly household shopping bills. Products such as milk, eggs and margarine have seen the fastest rise in costs. The impact of the vegetable and fruit shortages is not yet included in the new inflation figures. Thousands of teachers are striking across England and Wales for 3 days this week in their ongoing dispute over pay. The National Education Union says teachers will walk out in the north of England today, with the majority of schools restricting access for pupils or fully closing. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has called strike action unforgivable, adding that children deserve to be in class, especially after the pandemic. Union members in the Midlands and eastern regions of England will join the picket line tomorrow, with more walkouts in Wales and the south of England on Thursday. 3 energy companies are to bring a High Court challenge against the sale of collapsed company Bulb to Octopus Energy. Lawyers representing Scottish Power, British Gas and E.ON say there are serious public interest issues surrounding the deal and have questioned its lawfulness. They're trying to challenge 2 decisions by the Department for Enterprise, Energy and Industrial Strategy, approving the takeover and increasing a government loan to help with the transfer. Bulb went into administration at the end of 2021 with approximately 1.6 million customers on its books. Keen stargazers were treated to a second night of seeing the Northern Lights in the UK. Northern Scotland was the best place to view the aurora lights overnight. This was the view from the Isle of Skye. The phenomenon is the result of a solar storm. They'd previously been seen as far as Cambridgeshire the night before, but cloudy weather unfortunately prevented a second chance. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamsin. So that huge search currently underway at Brighton in Sussex for the missing baby amid growing fears for its well-being. Missing couple Constance Martin and Mark Gordon arrested in the city last night after 54 days on the run. More just coming in on this. Constance Martin's father, Napier Martin, has said or spoken of his immense relief that she had been found, but adding that this was tempered by the very alarming news that her baby has yet to be found. Mr Martin speaking to the Independent newspaper a short time ago. Well, the couple have reportedly failed to provide any details about the baby, believed to have been born in the back of a car in early January. after a major manhunt for the couple. Members of the public were asked to be on the lookout for any signs of the infant in Brighton, reportedly only days old, of course, when the couple went missing. A helicopter being deployed last night, searching a 10-mile zone. Police dogs and drones also being utilised in the city and on the exposed high ground of the nearby South Downs. Let's get the very latest now from Brighton and our security editor, Mark White, who's been following the police operation. And clearly, Mark, concerns for the welfare of this little infant.
Yes, and very detailed searches underway. There was a search right here until just a minute or two ago, but they've now moved on, Mark. They are continuing the search here in this wooded area behind me. You can't quite see them now as they're into the thicket here, but they've also been searching in a nearby allotment. That search is still going on as well. It's a line of police officers who are carrying out a very detailed search right through from the bottom end of the allotment, working their way right up towards the top. And it may be that they go back and there's a more forensic examination, but at the moment it's that line of police that we often see in search activity, a line of police officers giving that sort of, I wouldn't say it's a cursory search. They are looking, they are picking up tarpaulin and looking inside greenhouses. But of course, as always with searches, they'll give it a once-over as detailed as they can, then they'll come back and they'll retrace and redo that grid pattern again to make sure that they haven't missed anything. But some real concern, of course, because quite a few hours have elapsed now since this couple were found in this area last night. They have not been, according to the police, cooperative in their terms of the questions that they have been asking with regards to that infant and the whereabouts of that infant. And that, of course, is great concern to the police because they don't know whether that child is in a place of safety, where that child might be. Indeed, the couple, they believe, had the child at the point where they were first seen on around about the 5th, 6th and 7th of January. But after that, there's nothing really certain in this mystery.
Yeah, clearly one of the sightings, I think, was also at Newhaven, of course, about 12 miles down the coast. We'll just let you get your equipment sorted out there for the sound, Mark. Just to update people, clearly one of the sightings was at Newhaven in Sussex, along the coast there from Brighton. They were seen near the ferry port on January the 8th. And of the sightings, it's believed that they've been sleeping rough in a blue tent, often moving around at night and in the early hours of the morning. To avoid detection. I think we can speak to Mark once more. Mark, you can hear us at the moment? No, I think we've lost the sound there with Mark. But just to update you on what's happening with the search itself, as Mark was reporting, this allotment in the Hollingbury area is being searched currently. Also, we believe that dogs and drones will be employed further up towards the Sussex Downs nearby in Hollingbury, and indeed the public there in Brighton being asked to try and look in various outbuilding sheds and so on. Well, these are the live pictures we're just getting in now, which is what Mark was talking about in terms of the allotment. I think this is the Rodale allotment site. Just to give you a sense of geography, this is to effectively the northeast of the city towards higher ground away from the city centre. The couple were actually arrested after being spotted in Stanmer Villas last night at 9:30 and are now being held on suspicion of child neglect by officers from Sussex Police, but also officers from the Met Police being brought in to augment that search by police. I think we can speak to Mark once more, having sorted out our technical difficulties. Mark, I was just saying that clearly in terms of the manpower that's needed, Met Police officers also brought in to help with this search.
Yeah, well, they still have primacy for this investigation. Of course, the couple lived in London originally, and it's the Metropolitan Police that's heading up the ongoing investigation. We've counted at least 50 police officers down here. Those Metropolitan Police officers, many of them that have been carrying out that methodical search of the allotments and the wooded area behind us. And then there's other officers, specialist officers from a combined task force of Surrey and Sussex police. They share some of their specialist crime operations. So those units have, along with other officers from Sussex Police to help out. They've been carrying out throughout the morning door-to-door inquiries, of course. There are, and maybe we can just give you a look behind here, some residential areas, although where we are, reserve up here as well. There is still housing around here too, and it was one of the residents from this block that called the police around about 9:30 last night to say that they believe that they had spotted Constance Martin and Mark Gordon, and that's what of course alerted the police first of all. They've been carrying out door-to-door inquiries here, getting more information. There's another neighbour that we spoke to who's reluctant to go on camera, but he had said that he'd seen yesterday morning walking up here with what looked like a woman's suitcase. He said he found it suspicious at that time. He didn't contact the police, and it didn't ring a bell with him that this may have been the missing man, Mark Gordon. But now, of course, after the fact, and now that these two are in custody, he absolutely thinks that was him. We showed him a picture and he confirmed that to us.
We are getting some breakup on the signal, Mark, but we'll try and stay with it. Just for one last point, I mean, I think going back to January the 8th, there were reports that they may have been seen at Newhaven, the Channel port about 12 miles just down the coast. And some reports, I gather, that they may have been sighted there more recently as well. So is the search going to extend further into Sussex?
Well, I think this is certainly a key location for now, because it was the spot they were picked up in. But you're right, you know, this couple right from the point that that vehicle was found on the M61 near Bolton. They then travelled to Liverpool. They travelled down to Essex, in Colchester, and then at the port of Harwich down there before going to London, and then making their way down to Newhaven there, where, as you say, is the port. And the trail really had gone cold, but as you say, some more recent sightings, it was believed, but not confirmed sightings, of course, of the couple, just alleged or believed sightings of them. But what we know for sure, of course, is it was a confirmed sighting here, because they are now in police custody. It is of great concern, I think, though, to the police that now in custody, they seem not to be cooperating with the key question of where is that infant, what happened to that child, because that is the uppermost concern for those police officers now going forward, is to try and find that baby.
Indeed. Mark, for the moment, thank you for updating us there with the search down in Brighton. We'll just update you with a bit more that we're getting from Constance Martin's father, Napier Martin. As we're saying, he's spoken to say of his immense relief that Constance had been found, but tempered by the very alarming news, as he put it, the baby's not yet been found. He's told reporters, for whatever reason, she and a partner went on the run. The consequences of their actions have increased manyfold. It would have been far better if they'd handed themselves in earlier, saying he was profoundly grateful to police for committing great resources to the search. He went then on to say, when the time comes, I'm longing to see Constance, to reassure her that whatever the weather, I love her dearly and will support her as best I can through the difficult weeks and months here on in. Saying that, speaking to the Independent newspaper. More, of course, on the search as it comes in. But let's reflect now on Rishi Sunak, who appears to have done the impossible by striking a Brexit deal with Brussels over Northern Ireland. And it appears to have pleased all sides, mostly. The Prime Minister saying he is over the moon. But we are still awaiting the all-important verdict from the DUP, although early indications are good for the Prime Minister. The Unionist Party's response more positive than many had anticipated. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson saying the party will act in a reasonable way. Well, the inclusion of an emergency brake, which would give Stormont the power to effectively veto EU trade law, may be enough to seal the deal. Well, the Prime Minister addressing business leaders in County Antrim in Northern Ireland earlier, this is what he had to say.
Well, I'm confident that the Windsor framework that we announced yesterday resolves the issues that people have with the protocol. It restores balance to the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, and that's what was needed. It does three things. It makes sure that the flow of goods around our UK internal market is really smooth with our green lane. It makes sure that Northern Ireland's place in the Union is protected, so that for people living in Northern Ireland, they get all the same benefits, the same products as they would anywhere else in the UK. And crucially, it safeguards sovereignty for the people and institutions of Northern Ireland, with a new Stormont brake allowing them to stop rules that they don't think are right for them from coming in. So taken in the round, I think it's an incredibly positive step forward. And what I want now is for people to take the time to study the detail, because there's a lot in there, but I'm confident that it does provide a basis for parties to look at it, for all of us to come together and build towards a brighter future for Northern Ireland.
The Stormont brake, it's not a veto for Stormont, it is a brake. The veto would be if the UK government decide that they want to stop the law. Do you think that can you tell me the circumstances where you think that you would use the Stormont brake, and what will that mean for the role of the ECJ?
Well, the Stormont brake is an incredibly powerful new cross-community safeguard that we've been able to negotiate with the EU. And what it means is that the people and institutions of Northern Ireland are in control of their destiny. And if there's a significant EU law that comes along that will have lasting and significant impact on the everyday lives of people here in Northern Ireland, that the Assembly will be allowed to pull the emergency brake. And it's built on something called the Petition of Concern mechanism, which is a Good Friday Agreement institution, requires the support of 30 MLAs from two parties. And once that's done, to be crystal clear, the UK government then does have an unequivocal veto. And what I've said is that the UK government wants to sit down with the parties in Northern Ireland, the Assembly, to codify how the UK government would use that veto to make sure that everyone has reassurance that it will work properly. And that's what I'd like to engage with the parties. And it's one of the key parts of this deal. It safeguards sovereignty for the people and institutions of Northern Ireland. It's what people were asking for, and the Windsor framework delivers it. And I think it's more than anyone expected, and I hope that's why people can see that this is a really positive step forward.
Rishi Sunak speaking in County Antrim a little earlier. Well, let's speak to our political editor now, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Belfast for us. And Darren, as the kids ask in the back of the car, are we there yet?
No. But
okay.
They're certainly on their way, I would suggest, Mark. They're on their way. I say not there yet because even the Prime Minister's pretty cock-a-hoot this morning here in Belfast, talking about the fact he's over the moon about the deal that he signed with Ursula von der Leyen yesterday. And there is little doubt that the newspaper headlines this morning are incredibly good for Rishi Sunak. Even papers like the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph that have been pretty sceptical of Rishi Sunak to date are saying that he does seem to have done the art of the impossible. And the mood music in Parliament was pretty good last night. He's not quite there yet, and the reason I say that is because of one party, and that's the DUP. Now, we've had mixed responses from DUP members over the last 24 hours or so. Last night, we heard from Ian Paisley Jr. and Sammy Wilson, two senior DUP MPs, suggesting that they didn't think that this deal was going to cut the mustard. Now, that wasn't the view of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson today, the leader of the DUP, who seemed to be saying that actually when you look at something like the Stormont brake, it does seem like it is a good thing and something they could work with. However, they're not prepared to fully sign up to this framework yet. They're going to wait, they're going to consult the members, they're going to consult people across Northern Ireland, and they're also going to consult the lawyers, because they say sometimes the devil really is in the detail. You have to remember there is politics involved in all of this as well, Mark, and I say that because ultimately, you know, the DUP are not the largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly anymore. If they went back into government here, it would mean Sinn Féin taking up that top post. There will be some DUP members who will not be terribly comfortable with that prospect. And there are local elections here in Northern Ireland as well, and the DUP have to be very concerned that, you know, they've got a flank on the right, or the hard Brexiteers here in Northern Ireland. They lost votes to them in the last election. They don't want to do the same this time round.
And it's interesting that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has said no splits in the party will act in a reasonable way. But is it the fact that perhaps Sammy Wilson's and the Ian Paisleys are differing in their assessment to the party leadership?
Yeah, I think they are. You know, the DUP, like all political parties, is a broad church, and it's not unlike people like Ian Pearsley Jr. or Sammy Wilson to have a differing view and to be a bit more outspoken than the leadership, though I'm sure the DUP will come to a consensus on all of this. That is one of the reasons that we're not expecting a decision from them anytime soon, because there will be widespread consultations within the Unionists and Loyalist communities here in Northern Ireland about whether they'll accept this deal, and of course that will have an impact on whether Conservative backbenchers will decide to back it as well. Just one other note that was interesting today that people have picked up on. We've heard this actually a little bit recently, but it was pretty explicit from the Prime Minister today about this idea that Northern Ireland now essentially has the best of both worlds, i.e. it has access to the single market of Great Britain while also having access to the rest of the European Union's single market as well. He was talking about what an achievement that is and what a great investment opportunity is for Northern Ireland. Of course, some would point out, well, that slightly undermines the whole aspect of Brexit, because the whole of the UK had access to the EU single market before the vote. So people saying Prime Minister being slightly inconsistent on that point.
Yeah, let's just turn the clock back a little bit to what the Times carried on its front page, suggesting that Rishi Sunak would perhaps try and get this through, even if it meant the DUP weren't on board. Now, clearly, we've heard about the importance of getting the DUP back in power sharing on Stormont, but are there the circumstances where the assessment will be made, let's put this framework in practice, let's have it actually working, and the DUP can decide whether to come along with it whenever they make their decision?
Yeah, interestingly, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly was asked about this morning. Essentially, is the DUP necessary for this deal to succeed? He wouldn't be drawn on that point. I might suggest there is potentially a strategy here where if the DUP can't get on board, or if they remain pretty ambivalent, that they're not prepared to back the deal, I think the government will proceed with this with a vote in the Commons. Now, they know it's clearly going to get through. We heard from Labour and the SNP last night saying that they would back this deal, irrespective of what the Conservative Party did. Of course, Rishi Sunak will never want to rely on opposition votes to get it through. But I think there may well be a strategy to essentially isolate the DUP on all of this, that if the vast majority of the Conservative Party back it, if the two opposition parties back it, if every other political party, bar a couple here in Northern Ireland, back it, the DUP may well find themselves quite isolated. Also, do not forget, Mark, that one of the key kind of reasons for trying to get this deal was to get Stormont restored. And so, even though the vote will go through, it will be a big blow for the Prime Minister if he doesn't manage to get the DUP on board, because Stormont, the local Northern Ireland Assembly here, will not sit. And that's not great, particularly given the fact that, in just 6 weeks' time, it's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and that's the main aim, to try and get government back up here in Northern Ireland for that anniversary date.
And Washington wanting that in place, clearly, from what they've said as well with the Biden administration. Darren in Belfast, thank you for that. And, of course, we'll see, as we say, what the reaction is in the coming hours and days. We'll stay with politics. Coming up, from former Tiller girl on the stage to making a political song and dance. Yes, the tribute's being paid to Betty Boothroyd, who's died at the age of 93. Tribute's coming up shortly.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back. Let's get some more reaction now to these momentous events in Northern Ireland, with Rishi Sunak, of course, speaking there today. The Windsor framework, but how secure a footing does it have? Let's speak to Northern Ireland, Northern Irish journalist and historian Ruth Dudley-Edwards. Although I think you like to call yourself British and Irish at the same time, Ruth. Is that right?
That's right, Mark, and I am. I mean, I was born and brought up in Dublin, Irish nationalist Catholic background. Came to live in England at 21. I have been terribly happy here. And I've gradually become a Northern Ireland unionist, just to confuse all the issues, because I started to cover Northern Ireland. And I respected a people who refused to be bullied by terrorists. And I began to respect their integrity. And I know they can be very awkward. And I'm not denying that the DUP is a potential problem here. But I care. I'm a very enthusiastic Brexiteer. I mean, I truly am an unrepentant Brexiteer, and I am a solid unionist. But I think this is a wonderful day, and I think we should all be congratulating Rishi.
OK, well, as you said, I mean, you're covering all bases from your experience, which is an interesting thing in itself. And I know you weren't really very keen to come on and speak to us until you'd actually looked at things in detail, which, of course, all sides are at the moment. But, I mean, by and large, it does seem to be a thumbs up, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it's a thumbs up. And I think that Ian Paisley Jr. will be striking attitudes. That's what he does. And Sammy likes an audience. But I truly think that Jeffrey Donaldson is a wily bird. And I think he'll manage to square the party. And I also think all the people I know in Northern Ireland are so fed up and bored with all this. But they care about sovereignty. And it's very clear that the Prime Minister understands that. And that's key to it. That's the thing that's important for me. And also, of course, being able to do their business every day without stupid documentation. So I think this is going to give them what they want. And do you know, the thing about Rishi Sunak, and I have been almost whispering for the last few weeks to people, honestly, I think he's competent. And I don't think we need the vision thing at the moment. I think we need somebody who gets it done. And he's done that. I don't think he's put a foot wrong. And I'm not one to judge a Prime Minister like that after a few weeks.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, given, as you say, the sort of exasperation that people will have at how long this has gone on, I mean, it does seem that he's put together this deal pretty quickly. And we do understand, obviously, with a lot of pressure coming from Washington to get something in place for this anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes, and I don't think he's missed a trick on it. Because I think, you know, Theresa May started it all off on a terrible footing. Because she took the EU view of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement and thought that you couldn't have a land border. There was no reason not to have a land border. There's been a land border always. Yeah. But they played it really stupidly at that stage of the game. And then it was too late. And we were always on the wrong foot. And whatever it is about Rishi, I think he looks at the documentation. He looks at the small print. He understands the law. And that was vital in this case. And nobody else really did. I think he looked,
do you find it significant? Yeah, do you find it significant we've not heard from a certain Boris Johnson as yet?
I think that's very significant. And I have a soft spot for Boris. You know, he lifts my spirits, he usually did. And I did hope that the good Boris would triumph over the irresponsible Boris as Prime Minister. But alas, he didn't.
So he's cooked his own goose, maybe, with that oven-ready quote that he's reminded of so often.
Well, he always relies on his own brilliance. And sometimes you have to do the homework as well.
And just with your position as a writer and a historian, I mean, is this now one of the final chapters, or is the story going to continue?
Well, the story of Northern Ireland is going to continue, because the truth of the matter is that Sinn Féin is a cancer on the island of Ireland. It is. It wants to bring down the state.
Let's just temper that with the fact that obviously there is a democratic process and they have their membership within Stormont, and that's been voted by people in the democratic principle.
Mark, I accept that, but I also know that it is very hard for to work with a party which does not want the state it's being paid to serve.
OK, well, we'll see what political arguments develop, of course, when Stormont comes back in, if, of course, the DUP come back to power sharing, which is what everyone hopes. But Ruth Dudley Edwards, thank you very much indeed. One last thought.
I think Sinn Féin will play ball at the moment because their eyes are on the southern election and they want to be seen to be responsible.
OK, realpolitik. Thank you very much indeed for your assessment, and we'll see what emerges in the coming days. Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's reflect that the Windsor framework, not the only thing that stopped Westminster in its tracks yesterday. So too the news of the passing of parliamentary favourite Betty Boothroyd, with a minute's silence being held in the chamber after the announcement of her passing, the former Speaker, of course, at the age of 93. The first woman to hold the post, breaking more than 700 years of parliamentary tradition, and a former Tiller girl, a dancer, causing quite a political song and dance too during her time in the Commons, as her former colleagues now remember.
Betty Boothroyd was an icon. I mean, she was a woman who broke the mould, and she sent messages to people like me as a young girl that it was possible to become a Member of Parliament. So she's someone who's going to be sorely missed. Even in her 90s, you could see her around the place active, and the world's not the same without her.
We all knew her as Betty. She had the acceptance and control over the whole chamber because she had a warmth and a speed of thought, and you need that as a deputy speaker or as a speaker to control the whole chamber, to deal with the difficult individuals at any moment. But she had a lovely warm side to her privately as well. She was a chronic smoker, and for her sessions when she was sat in the chair as deputy speaker, she would need to nip out into the corridor to have a cigarette, which she did, and you're not allowed to leave the Speaker's chair empty. So she used to get a government backbencher to sit in the chair in her place. I used to drink with her in Annie's bar. She would talk quite openly about the fact that she was irritated or frustrated or enjoying herself in the chair at any given time, but she would never, ever disclose who had irritated her, who had pleased her. She kept the secrecy of the impartial Deputy Speaker and Speaker at all times. A wonderful woman.
Remembering Betty Boothroyd and her sneaky fag behind the Speaker's chair. Wonderful stories. More coming up on what's going on with Northern Ireland. We'll have all the details from Belfast, but let's get an update on the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. It's 12:34. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner, Mark Gordon, went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Speaking to The Independent, Constance Martin's father has spoken of his immense relief that his daughter's been found, but that it's very alarming that her baby remains missing. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to a male confinement. The Prime Minister says now is the time to come together as he praised the new Windsor framework during a visit to Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday with the EU alongside the Commissioner there. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing, free trade across the UK. However, the deal does still allow for some oversight by the European Court of Justice. The DUP are now analysing the details. But the Prime Minister says it's a great building block.
I'm glad that the Windsor framework delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. It absolutely ensures the smooth flow of goods around our UK internal market. It protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, making sure everything is the same for people as it should be, and crucially, it safeguards sovereignty. That's what the Windsor framework delivers, and now is the time for everyone to study the detail and come together so we can move forward and build a positive future for Northern Ireland.
TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back to GB News Live. Now, let's update you on the double rapist who changed gender while waiting to stand trial, now being jailed for 8 years in Scotland. Isla Bryson attacked 2 women in Clydebank and Glasgow in 2016 and 2019 while known as Adam Graham. Well, a judge today said that Bryson posed a high risk of reoffending and will be supervised for 3 years further after his release. The case has sparked a heated debate over whether Bryson should be housed in a male or female prison after transitioning from a man to a woman. Our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has the background to the story.
In 2016 and 2019, Adam Graham raped 2 women in Clydebank and Glasgow. Awaiting trial, he underwent gender transition to become Isla Bryson. Found guilty of both offences last month, Bryson's case became the centre of a political migraine for the Scottish Government. Scottish Conservative Shadow Minister for Community Safety Russell Finlay explains the public backlash.
Absolutely extraordinary and indeed obscene that a male-bodied double rapist should have been sent from court after being convicted of raping 2 women to serve his time in HMP Compton Vale, a women's prison. Now, thankfully, due to the public backlash, he was only in the prison for 2 days before being sent back to the male estate.
Bryson's incarceration was as much a talking point among the public as it was at Holyrood. Following the First Minister's U-turn, Nicola Sturgeon was on the back foot to endure weeks of grilling by Leader of the Opposition Douglas Ross.
Will Nicola Sturgeon and her government consider him a man or a woman?
How they are dealt with in the prison estate, that is the relevant factor.
This double rapist, this beast, is in a woman's prison
right now.
While Bryson was awaiting trial, the Scottish Parliament passed the Gender Recognition Reform Bill with cross-party support.
Yes, 86, no 39, and the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
But in the wake of Bryson's conviction, the UK government stepped in to block the bill with the unprecedented use of a Section 35 order. Nicola Sturgeon maintains that no single issue is responsible for her resignation, but there is little doubt that the explosive public reaction to gender reform in the context of the Bryson verdict played a role.
It's just awful the trial has happened so close to the bill going through, and then the reaction of the UK government.
I was quite happy with her, particularly at the beginning when I first moved up. I thought she did a very good job and she was a very seasoned politician. But, you know, throwing women under the bus on this has been absolutely appalling.
I do respect her stance on like trans rights and stuff, so if she's been ousted because of that, I think it's really unfortunate.
I think she's been a liability to Scotland. I think she's been an embarrassment to Scotland, to be honest.
In Scots law, only a man can rape a woman. So under intense public scrutiny, the First Minister conceded that Isla Bryson would serve out her time in a male prison.
This prisoner is not going to be incarcerated in Cornton Vale Women's Prison.
The future of gender reform is still up for debate in the court of public opinion, but Isla Bryson will be sentenced to Edinburgh High Court later today, closing out a case that's left a permanent mark in Scottish politics and the future leadership of the SNP. Tony Maguire, GB News.
Well, let's get more with Tony, who was following the sentencing this morning. Tony, what did the judge have to say?
Well, certainly Lord Scott today, he pointed out that Isla Bryson thought herself a victim, and in no uncertain terms he replied, "You are not." Today, of course, sentencing comes 5 weeks after the trial concluded with the verdict in January, and certainly Lord Scott had said prior that he wanted to take as much time as he could to deliberate the multitude of circumstances around this case. Certainly he, as you mentioned, sentenced Isla Bryson to 8 years imprisonment, along with 3 extended years for close supervision. And I believe that close supervision is going to also extend to her time in the prison, which should hopefully allay some of the fears that the public has put out there in terms of her interaction with other prisoners. In terms of the severity, certainly Lord Scott pointed to the trial back in January, claiming that Bryson's vehement denial that she committed these crimes, along with her baseless accusation that the victims somehow knew each other and conspired against her, and he then went on to confirm that her highly volatile childhood, her vulnerable status in terms of neurodivergent conditions, but ultimately these vulnerabilities did not outweigh the severity of her crimes and the damage that she caused. Interestingly, one thing that came out just before the sentence was handed down was that Isla Bryson is going forward to have gender reassignment surgery. We know that the health service was willing to carry it out. We don't know whether that health service is private or national, but I would reckon that quite a lot of the public would be interested to find out why their tax pounds were going towards that kind of surgery. Certainly this case has been embroiled with the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. So much has happened in the last 5 weeks around this issue and around the satellite issues of the gender identity campaign from the Scottish Government. Certainly, hopefully for the victims, who I must say have been relatively absent in a lot of the discussion, hopefully today will add an element of closure to what has understandably been a very difficult time in the last few weeks.
And Tony, one last thought. Given what the court heard, that he's pursuing or she's pursuing this gender reassignment and currently on the maximum recommended dose of hormone prescription, that's what the court was told, do we know if Isla Blair will be housed in a female or male prison? Because, of course, that was part of the controversy before the sentencing was carried out there.
Yeah, I think the truth is I can't give you a definite answer. The expectation is widely that she will be held in a male prison, which then of course presents a whole new layer of issues, both for the Scottish Prison Service and for the Scottish Government. I think that will be one that I will certainly leave to someone who is slightly better versed in the prison proceedings to answer for me.
Indeed, because obviously the prison service takes over responsibility from that court, as you say. Tony in Edinburgh, thank you for updating us with that, and of course we'll see what the circumstances are as we learn more. Now, let's reflect. Grocery price inflation surged again, now 17.1%. I think it was about 16.8 previously, but that'll add another £811 to the annual grocery bill. Well, prices rising fastest with milk, eggs, margarine, according to the market insight firm Kantar, saying the latest data for the 4 weeks to the 19th of February, representing the highest level of grocery inflation ever recorded. Let's get more with our economics and business editor Liam Halligan with On the Money. And one reflects, Liam, of course, perhaps it might push even higher with all these shortages we're learning about, you know, the fresh vegetables or at least salad crops. And, you know, people are really finding it hitting them in the pocket.
Indeed, Mark. So these aren't official Office for National Statistics numbers. This is from Kantar, a highly respected sort of market analysis agency. And it's interesting that food prices are second only to energy prices, so utility bills, when it comes to the general public's concern about this cost of living crisis. Of course, when it comes to filling up your car, petrol prices are now pretty much back where they were before the war in Ukraine, so this time last year, or certainly January 2022, though diesel prices are a bit more. But even though energy prices are starting to come down a bit as petrol prices are coming down, there's no sign that this is happening with food prices. This number that you've cited, 17.1%, Mark, it's the month from the 19th of January to the 19th of February this year compared to the same period in 2022, and that's 17.1% higher. And for instance, if you take a half kilo, 500 gram bag of pasta, Mark, before the war, that cost you 50p.
The Ukraine situation was because of the grain supplies.
It cost you 50p a year and a bit ago. It now costs you 95p because, as you say, Russia and Ukraine between them produce about a quarter of the world's wheat exports. And a lot of that wheat isn't getting through because it's all exported traditionally through ports like Odessa in southern Ukraine, and those ports are either blockaded or have been influenced by the war.
So almost doubling. Now, it's interesting, we had the Food Minister, Mark Spencer, speaking to the supermarket bosses yesterday, the NFU saying, you know, Britain had been sleepwalking into a food supply crisis. I think that's, and clearly there is a question mark about how much the supermarkets can absorb the increased cost of the raw goods coming in, and when they pass that on to the consumer.
Right. Luckily for consumers, our supermarket sector is very, very competitive when it comes to the offer that they give to consumers. So what we've seen, and you and I have talked about this before, we've seen the discounter supermarkets, so the ones that tend to be, with all respect to them, a little bit more cheap and cheerful, so the likes of Aldi and Lidl, they won't mind me saying that. Obviously, quality food, but with the focus on value, they've been taking market share off the more upmarket brands, Waitrose and also Tesco and Sainsbury's. So Aldi's now at 10% of the market, which is a real change. And so the more established brands, the Sainsbury's and Tesco, which is the real giant, they are cutting their prices for certain ranges in order to try and keep their what we call market share. But what farmers are saying, what the NFU is saying, but the NFU is saying that the supermarkets are maintaining their margins, the supermarket deny this, so they're giving customers a better deal off the back of farmers. And
squeezing the supplier.
Farmers, as we know, they rely on fuel, feedstock, fertiliser, right?
All getting more expensive.
And then finance. We call it the 4 Fs of farming. All those things have become much, much more expensive for farmers. Their diesel's more expensive, and the red diesel scheme, which used to give them, you know, lower tax on their commercial diesel, that's being phased out. Feedstock, which is the what farmers feed their cattle, their hens. That's why eggs are so much more expensive. Fertiliser, of course, has gone through the roof because Russia, Belarus have a lot of the potash that's on the European landmass, which is used for fertiliser. Gas is also used for fertiliser. And, of course, finance. A lot of farmers rely, to some extent, on borrowed money in order to finance the drilling of seeds and
buying new equipment,
the fertiliser, fertilising of their crops. On all those 4 Fs, farmers are getting squeezed, and farmers are saying, yes, consumers are getting the best possible deal they can, but it's off our backs, and that is not sustainable.
Yeah, very quick last thought. We're going to hear more on March the 15th in the budget about what the government might try to do to help us all. It might be in fits and starts, because we're learning that some of the civil servants will be going on strike on March the 15th.
This is really quite astonishing. We talk about, train driver unions timing the strikes to be at the most difficult time for the public and so on. But for the civil servants, and the main unions involved are PCS and Prospect, look, they're not here. They would say, we deserve this, we should get a pay rise and so on. We've got to stick up for our members. But the idea that the government is going to do a major public announcement on the public finances at a time when the last announcement on the public finances caused a crisis of confidence across international markets, when there's so much financial angst and broader insecurity across the population, to not facilitate the government to make those financial statements in an orderly and confidence-building way
to keep the markets happy.
It's pretty rich.
Yeah. OK, we'll see what happens on the 15th. And, of course, you'll be with us for that day and doing all the numbers, perhaps without much detail from the government. Who knows? We shall see. Liam, thank you very much indeed. Now, a huge day, of course, for both the EU and for Britain, with the news of the Brexit deal. Well, what about the mood in Westminster today? Let's get more with Tom Harwood joining us. And Tom, I gather there's been a little bit of sort of indication from Downing Street on this business about the sort of single market, and remarks from Rishi Sunak when he was in Northern Ireland earlier today.
Yes, Rishi Sunak has been speaking to businesses in Northern Ireland today, talking about the access that Northern Ireland will have, both to the United Kingdom and to the EU single market. Now, there's been a lot of buzz online that somehow this is Rishi Sunak saying that single market membership is a very good thing. Downing Street firmly rebuffed that in our briefing this morning, saying that no, Rishi Sunak was talking, of course, about this almost dual regulatory regime where Northern Ireland is not only a member of the EU single market. It has this privileged access because there will be this almost dual regime operating in Northern Ireland, where UK standards, different, diverging UK standards, can apply, and British sausages can end up on Northern Ireland shelves with no issue, but also EU-regulated products can sit there happily, travelling in to Northern Ireland without those checks within the island of Ireland, and so you sort of get this best of both worlds position. That's what Rishi Sunak was saying at the Coca-Cola manufacturing plant a little bit earlier today. And it is interesting looking at Coca-Cola as a business, because I don't know if you often buy a can of Coca-Cola, Mark, but when I do, sometimes you'll see there's a little label on the top of the can saying multi-pack can, not for single-use sale. And I think what we're going to start to see as a result of this agreement is a lot more labelling in Northern Ireland, and perhaps in the United Kingdom as well. Products labelled UK good, not for EU consumption, because that's basically what this deal agrees. Red lane and green lane. UK products staying within the UK, not going on to the EU, but being able to be unfettered, unchecked between Northern Ireland and Great Britain.
And, of course, the assessment as to whether, if you pardon the pun, it will all fall flat or the fizz might go out of it once the DUP have taken this apart. We're understanding from Geoffrey Donaldson that, the willingness is there, but clearly what is exercising in them is this so-called Stormont break. Is that a veto or not?
Well, this is a really crucial question, and it's something that I've been able to get some clarification on in the last hour. There were lots of reports yesterday that this Stormont break would need cross-community consent to be able to be deployed, i.e. unless the DUP and Sinn Féin both agree, they wouldn't be able to stop EU law. Well, I understand that's not actually how it would work. The way that this Stormont break would work is if there was new EU law coming in, being imposed on Northern Ireland, that people within Northern Ireland did not want, 30 members of the Legislative Assembly in Northern Ireland, 30 MLAs, that's 1/3 of the Assembly, from two parties, they would be able to put forward a petition of concern that would then disapply that law before it was there, and the UK government would have the final say on that. Now, there is nothing within that mechanism that means it has to be cross-party. Interestingly, two parties, that could be, for example, the DUP and the UUP. Two unionist parties could band together and stop that EU law.
OK, very quickly, we haven't heard from the ERG, we haven't heard from Boris Johnson. What's going on behind the scenes?
No, we haven't heard from Boris Johnson. Clearly, the ERG is compiling its group of its star chamber lawyers to pour through the legal text. The DUP also getting senior lawyers to look through that text. Boris Johnson has not issued a statement, has not followed that at all. I would be surprised if we heard anything from Boris Johnson, frankly, this week.
OK, Tom, as ever, thank you for updating us from the lobby briefing. Just to bring you a bit more news, what we were talking to Liam about in terms of budget day, we're being told those 33,000 civil servants will be from the tax office. So if there are major tax changes in the budget, which there will be, perhaps we won't get the detail until a little bit later, joining another 100,000 civil servants taking industrial action on that day. More reaction coming up to that. And we'll have the latest, of course, coming up on that search in Brighton for that baby, the 2-month-old baby, after the missing couple were arrested in the city last night. All the latest coming up on GB News Live. Stay with us.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 1 o'clock. You're watching GB News Live. I'm Mark Longhurst, and coming up for you this lunchtime, the desperate search underway for a tiny baby. After 54 days on the run, the missing couple, Constance Martin and Mark Gordon, found in Brighton last night. But the child, the 2-month-old baby, still missing. The couple reportedly providing no information to police. Now, a massive search underway in the Sussex seaside city and on the exposed high ground of the Downs nearby. We'll have the latest from Brighton with our security editor, Mark White. The Northern Ireland Brexit deal is done. Rishi Sunak seemingly achieving what his predecessors had failed to do. Today, the Prime Minister in Belfast to try and build on the Windsor framework. We'll have the latest with our political editor who's in Belfast. And food price inflation soaring to a record high of 17.1%, according to the latest figures. It'll make your annual food bill rise by another £800. We're breaking down the costs with Liam to see what it means for you at home. And don't forget to get in touch with your views on all the stories of the day. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We want to hear from you. But before that, let's get an update on the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 1. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner, Mark Gordon, went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Speaking to The Independent, Constance Martin's father has said it's a huge relief his daughter's been found, but very alarming that her baby is missing. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to a male confinement. The Prime Minister says now is the time to come together as he praised the new Windsor framework during a visit of Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday alongside the EU Commissioner. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing, free trade across the UK. However, the deal does still allow for some oversight by the European Court of Justice. The DUP are now analysing the details. But the Prime Minister says it's a great building block.
Glad that the Windsor framework delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. It absolutely ensures the smooth flow of goods around our UK internal market. It protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, making sure everything is the same for people as it should be, and crucially, it safeguards sovereignty. That's what the Windsor framework delivers, and now is the time for everyone to study the detail and come together so we can move forward and build a positive future for Northern Ireland.
Thousands of teachers are striking across England and Wales for 3 days this week in their ongoing dispute over pay. The National Education Union says teachers will walk out in the north of England today, with the majority of schools restricting access for pupils or fully closing. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has called strike action unforgivable, adding that children deserve to be in class, especially after the pandemic. Union members in the Midlands and eastern regions of England will join the picket line tomorrow, with more walkouts in Wales and the south of England on Thursday. Meanwhile, the PCS union says 33,000 more members are to strike on March the 15th, the day of the Chancellor's budget. The Public and Commercial Services Union represents members of the civil service, including in government departments, Border Force and the DVLA. 100,000 members are already due to strike, alongside London Underground workers in ASLEF in separate disputes. Teachers from the NEU in England and Wales are due to stage the final 2 days of walkouts as well. Grocery price inflation has reached a new record high of 17.1%. Analyst Kantar says this means an average increase of £811 to yearly household shopping bills. Products such as milk, eggs and margarine have seen the fastest rise in costs. The impact of the vegetable and fruit shortages is not yet included in the new inflation figures. 3 energy companies are to bring a High Court challenge against the sale of collapsed company Bulb to Octopus Energy. Lawyers representing Scottish Power, British Gas and E.ON say there are serious public interest issues surrounding the deal and have questioned its lawfulness. They're trying to challenge 2 decisions by the Department for Enterprise, Energy and Industrial Strategy, approving the takeover and increasing a government loan to help with the transfer. Bulb went into administration at the end of 2021 with approximately 1.6 million customers on its books. Keen stargazers were treated to a second night of seeing the Northern Lights in the UK. Northern Scotland was the best place to view the aurora lights overnight. This was the view from the Isle of Skye. The phenomenon is a result of a solar storm. They'd previously been seen as far as Cambridgeshire the night before, but cloudy weather unfortunately prevented a second chance. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamsin. So police confirming that missing couple Constance Martin and Mark Gordon now in custody after being arrested in Brighton last night. And let's just update you with what we're hearing from Constance Martin's father in this last hour, saying it's an immense relief to know my beloved daughter Constance has been found, but tempered by the very alarming news her baby has yet to be found. For whatever reason, she and her partner went on the run. The consequences of their actions have increased manyfold, he said. It would have been far better if they'd handed themselves in earlier. But he thanked members of the public who tipped off police about the couple's whereabouts, as well as the Metropolitan Police officers for what he said was their dogged investigation. Let's get the very latest now with our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's down there in Brighton. And Mark, clearly the Met Police still directly involved in this, working alongside now Sussex Police in this search operation that's underway.
Yes, indeed, they're searching the allotments behind us. I was hoping to give you a shot of that search, but it looks like they've disappeared out of shot again. Mark, you're quite unlucky in your timings when you come to us. So they've been searching all the way up the allotments here, right to the end of the allotments, and they've turned around and they're doing another search as they head back down the allotments to the other side. It's big, long allotments, good few hundred yards long. So a lot of buildings and bits of tarpaulin, other bits and pieces that they've got to kind of look under and look through to check to see if they found anything of any note. We know that they have recovered a pair of child's earmuffs. Quite what significance, if any, they have, I don't know at all. There was also a drum that was a scene of some interest for a while. There's still a police officer guarding that drum, but the indication is that there may be some animal bones that was found in that oil drum that the police were looking at. So it's not just this area here of the allotments, Mark, but also the nature reserve just around here. There's a wooded area. It's very popular with local residents who are coming, walking their dogs and just taking in the fresh air. Lots of people up and down the path here, and in amongst these people, of course, are police search teams combing the woodland, combing these allotments, trying desperately to find this infant. Of course, the longer it goes on, the more concerned, understandably, the police are.
And they're asking for the public's help in this because, of course, the couple was spotted by a member of public at Stanmer Villas, not that far away from where you are, last night at 9:30. And the baby, of course, not with them. And Sussex Police saying they arrested the couple on suspicion of child neglect. Now, given the fact that clearly it's thought that they were last seen back in early January, they're trying to piece together a picture of what may have happened to this infant, and no indication, as far as we know, that they've spoken to the police about that.
No, certainly the senior investigating officer indicated this morning that actually the couple had been uncooperative in terms of offering any kind of information on the whereabouts of this infant. Now, we haven't actually seen this baby at any point, but the police are convinced that there is a child involved because they carried out forensic examinations of the burnt-out vehicle that was found on the hard shoulder of the M61 on the 5th of January. It was the discovery of this vehicle that sparked this chain of events and this nationwide manhunt for this couple and the child. Now, the examination of this vehicle indicated that Constance had given birth to a child either the day before in the back of the vehicle or very near to the vehicle. Clearly the DNA they had found confirmed that for them. So, and they knew that she was pregnant at the time as well. But no sight really of the child since. There has been the CCTV images that have accompanied the nationwide hunt. As first of all, we heard that they'd gone to Liverpool the next again day, being seen there on CCTV.
Yeah.
They then moved down to Essex, in Colchester, and then in Harwich, the port of Harwich, before making their way to East London, again caught on CCTV, keeping their faces either covered or down. Constance was seen pushing what looked like a child's pushchair, but no indication that there was a child in there. It could easily have been carrying belongings. We just simply don't know at this stage. And then again, of course, the couple spotted as they moved down to Newhaven in Sussex, the port down there, some indications that they may have been, or certainly there were sightings unconfirmed of the couple in that area again in recent days. But of course we do know that they were found here after a sighting at 9:30 last night and found and arrested by the police shortly afterwards.
Yes.
Quite where they've been living, we don't know. The allotments is one particular area that they could have been living in.
And just quickly then, Mark, what do we expect in terms of the search being extended? Because we had these reports that the police helicopter was heard, of course, the South Downs, not very far away from there. I mean, will they perhaps go further afield in the coming hours?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the search will increase in range. What they'll want to do, I think, first of all, is really bottom out this area, because this was the area the couple were found in. So the indications, the conclusions you would draw from that is they must have been living rough somewhere in this area. Yeah. So when they can establish exactly where they were, then they can probably determine from that whether a child had been present with them when they were living rough as well. But it doesn't look, from what we're seeing in the way of the activity, that they've even found the location where the couple were staying.
Mm. OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed for updating us with the latest on the search. Back to you, of course, as we see and hear more. Now, let's reflect. We've got St David's Day tomorrow, 1st of March, and the Prince and Princess of Wales are in South Wales to champion mental health initiatives today and meet local communities there. The latest pictures just coming in for us. And this is the arrival a little later. And Cameron, our royal reporter, with us in the studio. This is a rehabilitation centre, gardens and allotments, Brynhowell, and volunteers helping people with various problems to actually, well, I think plant seeds and enjoy the garden and herbs and so on. It's quite a sort of holistic approach.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot going on today, Mark. It's very much a mental health day, I think, is how I would put it. 3 separate engagements we're getting from the Prince and Princess of Wales in South Wales. The pictures you are seeing now on your screens for those watching on television is at Aberavon Leisure Centre. It's one of the most deprived communities in Wales, Aberavon. In fact, I think it's in the lowest 4%, actually. They lost their leisure centre back in 2009 due to a devastating fire. They now have a brand new one with with state-of-the-art facilities. So the Prince and Princess of Wales, I'm told, could take part in the spin class there. It's all about sport and exercise, improving your mental health. But as you were saying earlier, Mark, I think that the headline of today for the Prince and Princess of Wales is their new community impact project, and that is the therapy garden, the allotments which you were talking about earlier. The Royal Foundation, which is their charity arm, has provided funding and has helped a local organisation provide funding for 6 new mental health gardens, as it were, where we have seen the Princess of Wales planting seeds, William seeds, because the flower has been named after Prince William
Sweet
this
Williams,
morning.
do we suggest?
Sweet Williams,
Maybe,
perhaps.
yeah,
I'm told it's going to take 2 years to grow, though, but yes.
There won't be Sweet Williams then. But interesting that they're clearly, I think, talking first-hand with those who've suffered from drug and alcohol addiction problems and mental health problems. And we think back, this was an initiative, of course, announced when they were the Fab Four. We remember with 2 others who are not named at the moment. And this, is being carried through even with their attachment to Wales. So this is their initiative, if you like, for the couple.
It certainly is. In fact, it almost started before the Fab Four, which you're talking about, came into being. It was the Heads Together campaign of the Royal Foundation, which was Prince and Princess of Wales, Duke and Duchess of Cambridge at the time, and Prince Harry, all about breaking down the stigmas to do with mental health. Now, of course, the Royal Foundation just belongs to William and Catherine, and we've really seen this theme of their work over the last 7-8 years or so from William and Kate about mental health, particularly addiction. The reason the Princess of Wales started her early childhood initiative, which we spoke about last month, talking about the importance of the first 5 years of a child's life.
Education.
The reason Catherine set that up is because she found that a lot of problems later on in life, particularly to do with addiction, alcohol and drugs and so on, the trauma stems from the first 5 years. So this is Will and Kate talking to people who have unfortunately suffered from those addictions.
And maybe from early deprivation in these sorts of areas, perhaps.
Exactly.
OK, thank you very much indeed for that, and we'll follow that, of course, with the visit likely to reflect on St David's Day, Dewi Sant, tomorrow as well. Now, let's return to issues in Northern Ireland, with the Prime Minister saying he is over the moon that he struck that Brexit deal with Brussels. So far, it seems to have pleased all sides to a degree, but still waiting for an official verdict from the DUP. Early indications, however, good for the Prime Minister. The Unionist Party's response more positive than many anticipated. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson saying the party will act in a reasonable way. It's the inclusion of an emergency brake which will give Stormont the power to effectively veto some EU trade law that may be enough to seal the deal. Let's get the latest now from Belfast with our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, quoting Sir Geoffrey Donaldson there. But, of course, there are others, Ian Paisley Jr., who aren't quite so enamoured of it. Is Ian Paisley and perhaps Sammy Wilson, a lone voice within the DUP at the moment?
I would suggest rogue voices, Mark, instead. I don't think they would have any problem with me calling slightly rogue MPs, in the sense that they are very independently minded, speak their minds. They were very quick off the block last night, suggesting that they didn't think this deal cut the mustard. But I would say, in all honesty, the person that you probably need to listen to a little more carefully is Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP. Now, he was on the radio this morning essentially arguing, if you like, that yes, progress has been made, significant progress, and it looks like this Stormont brake could be a thing that could work in their favour. However, they are going to hold off, and they're going to talk to lawyers, go through the final detail. They're going to talk to party members and consult throughout unionism and loyalism. Because remember, there are elections coming up here, Mark, in May, local elections. The DUP got slightly battered last time around during the Northern Irish elections, particularly on this issue of the protocol. They were seen to lose support to some more hardline unionists. The DUP cannot afford to do that again. It's the reason that Sinn Féin is now the largest party here in Northern Ireland in terms of MLAs, and that is why they're proceeding with caution. It's much about domestic politics here in Northern Ireland as it is about the details of that protocol. As for the Prime Minister, though, he's continuing his sales pitch to the UK, if you like, in Windsor yesterday, Parliament last night, in Belfast this morning, primarily talking to business business leaders here, trying to convince them that it is a good deal. They seem, it must be said, largely on side. Many businesses here in Northern Ireland actually quite like the protocol in the sense that it does give them access to Great Britain, to that single market, and to the EU single market as well. Not to say all businesses do, and that's who the Prime Minister was trying to win over, but in many ways he couldn't hide his joy this morning in some regards. He talked about being over the moon that this deal had been signed.
Interesting from what you were saying about Stormont and the mechanics in terms of getting power sharing back up and running with the DUP on board. Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill saying she'd spoken to the Prime Minister in a phone conversation. I welcomed yesterday's breakthrough. The deal is now done. My key message is let's keep momentum going. The priority must now be getting Stormont up and moving without delay. But as you indicated, they've got an interest in that, if you like, as in terms of the party's political position in Stormont. How long is the Prime Minister going to give the DUP to consider this before coming to some kind of decision?
Well, first of all, there is going to be that vote in Parliament. Now, that's a way aside and doesn't really involve the DUP to a degree. Clearly, the government will be concerned about potential Conservative rebels on the backbenches who've made it pretty clear that they will only back this deal if the DUP do. I don't think the DUP are in a rush to state whether they'll back this deal or not. When it comes to Stormont, be in no doubt, one of the reasons that Rishi Sunak has gone for this deal at this particular time is that in around 6 weeks' time, on the 10th of April, is 25 years on from the Good Friday Agreement. Now, that should be a form of celebration. We've effectively had pretty peaceful times for the last 25 years. Not all of the time, certainly, but it's a hell of a lot better than the 25 years that preceded the Good Friday Agreement. The UK government and others wanted to make a celebration of that. Now, the key tenet of the Good Friday Agreement is devolved government in Northern Ireland. It does not exist. So it wouldn't be much of a celebration if Stormont was not restored. And that's why there is an effort to try and get things in place by that date. DUP say they're not going to be rushed on all of this. So I suspect what we're going to see is this actually drag on potentially for days and weeks. Maybe a strategy where the UK government hopes through a kind of an element of isolation for the DUP, get everyone else to back the deal and pressurise them to do so. And also, as they always do in Northern Ireland, chuck money at the province, give the Northern Ireland Assembly more money and hope that in the end will persuade the DUP to go back into government here in Belfast.
And then get President Biden along to celebrate everything that's been achieved, of course. Darren, in Belfast for the moment, thank you very much indeed for that. But dare we ask the question, are you rather bored of hearing that phrase, Northern Ireland Protocol? Although, of course, it is now the Windsor framework, which has sort of visions of a rather elegant portico or maybe a conservatory. Well, all the news about Brussels and Brexit, you're not alone, it seems, because it's not lighting up focus groups, we're being told. One of the country's leading focus groupers believes that Rishi Sunak's success in striking that deal could help him at the ballot box. Luke Trill from More in Common joining us now. And Luke, interesting, because one of the suggestions, the fact the deal has been done, because a lot of the participants got so fed up with all this that they just wanted to get it done and out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say that the Northern Ireland Protocol isn't, the sort of issue which people are discussing over their cornflakes. But what we do know from our work talking to the British public all around the country is that they are fed up of this sense of Brexit chaos. They voted for it in 2016. We then went through all of those very painful debates up to 2019. And the thing with the protocol debate is it keeps this sense that it's still going on. It's still not resolved. So I think there are going to be lots of people around the country who won't be that interested in the specifics, but will just be breathing a sigh of relief that this phase of the drama is over.
Just a bit of breaking news coming through from Ulster Unionist leader Doug Beattie, basically on the deal being done. He's just said anyone who's saying this should take weeks and months, I think, is being disingenuous. Any political party should be able to look at this and engage with their party at every level, come up with what they believe to be the outcome, certainly within a week or so. So we may indeed be coming to a conclusion on this. What about the fact that it's actually been named the Windsor framework? I mean, is this a way of actually sugar-coating it and making it seem as if it's something new and, as you said, with the sort of visions of an elegant portico or whatever?
Well, certainly, I think it will have done no harm to communicating to the public that you have that framing around Windsor. You then had that meeting with the King afterwards. And although, we know the King's not supposed to get into politics, that does add a big seal of approval. And, the monarchy in all of our polling polls much higher than individual politicians do. So I think, again, in terms of selling this to the public as a new era, an era of making Brexit work, I think that framing really will help. And I think the other thing which is definitely going to help Rishi Sunak, I think, is this, when we speak to the public, that they're often torn. They're torn between, okay, this is clearly a smart, competent guy. He did furlough. He saved loads of jobs. But he's also really rich. Is he in touch with us? And I think what getting this deal done does is it shows that the former stuff, that deal, being a smart deal maker, is actually much more important than his personal wealth, because this is someone who can deliver in a way that Boris, Theresa, Liz Truss, even though it was only be, didn't do it. He's actually gone and done it, and that will appeal to people.
Yeah, as an effective chief executive. And, of course, we've not heard anything from Boris Johnson as yet. I mean, the other aspect is the vision, or the pictures we saw yesterday with Ursula von der Leyen and she calling him Dear Rishi, as an international statesman. He's achieved something on the world stage here.
Absolutely. And I think, again, when we talk to the public, there were times when, people liked Boris's leadership in Ukraine, but they would sort of say when he was meeting international leaders, oh, God, he does look a bit scruffy. He does look a bit all over the place. You contrast that with the very kind of slick image which Rishi projected in that meeting. And actually, I think that's going to go down very well with people because, again, people want to feel proud of our country on the international stage. They're proud of what we've done in Ukraine. Now they want to see us leading on other things rather than having these, what people quite frankly think are unnecessary rows with Europe, just getting on with it and charting out our future post-Brexit.
Luke, thanks very much indeed for your assessment and joining us here in GB News. Coming up, the strikes have not gone away. Today we've got members of the country's biggest teaching union walking out. Classrooms, particularly in the north of England. We'll be getting a later reaction from the picket line in Leeds. Stay with us for that.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are. We don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to GB News Live. And I'm afraid to say the strikes have not gone away, with thousands of teachers today striking across England and Wales, or at least this week. Members of the country's biggest union staging a 3-day walkout in their ongoing dispute over pay, pensions and conditions. Well, it's being designed to cause maximum effect, with each day with members of the National Education Union taking place in different regions, starting in the north of England today, then tomorrow members in the Midlands and eastern regions of the country joining the picket lines, with more walkouts for Wales and the south of England on Thursday. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, has called that action unforgivable. Our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley is in Hull for us and has been gauging reaction there. And Anna, it seems that they really are starting to dig in on this.
Hi, Mark. Definitely, yes. I've moved on. I was in Hull this morning, but I've actually come to Leeds this afternoon, where hundreds of teachers have turned out from 15 different NEU regional unions across Yorkshire and the Humber. There's a rally going on behind me now. We're here in Millennium Square, and there's teachers going up and speaking about the pressures that they say that they're facing. We know that this strike is about pay. Teachers were given a 5% pay rise last year, but the NEU is saying that that's not enough due to inflation and due to the rising costs of living. But teachers here are also saying it's about the conditions. They're saying that they're understaffed and underfunded, and that's having an impact on pupils. Well, I spoke to Helen Bellamy earlier. She is the treasurer for the Leeds NEU branch, and this is what she had to say.
We've got people from all around our region, mainly teachers, but we've also got the odd member of support staff. There's massive support from the public. We've got more picket lines this time than we had on the 1st of Feb. We've got leadership that are very supportive as well. They've been out supplying coffee, tea, because they understand that schools are in such a difficult financial state. We've got a massive shortage of teachers, particularly in high school in science and maths. Huge staff turnover in primary schools as well as high schools, and that's particularly difficult in very poor areas where children need that consistency and continuity. What we really need, we need funded pay rises, and we need this 5% to go up, and we need that to be funded, because every unfunded pay rise is money stolen from children.
Well, Anna, we heard the phrases there, continuity and consistency, but of course lots of mums and dads, and indeed the pupils themselves, the kids, are saying, well, you know, this doesn't help our learning, all this disruption, and it's continuing. Hello, Anna, can you hear us? I know there's a lot of background noise. I was just saying that we were picking up there the words consistency and continuity, but a lot of mums and dads and even the pupils themselves are saying, well, actually, these strikes are not helping that aspect in terms of the learning and the schooling that they're missing.
Yes, that is something that I've asked to teachers here today. In terms of the mood, there is a lot of frustration from them, but they said they do apologise to parents. You know, many may have only found out today when they were taking the children to school that their school was closed, because teachers don't have to give schools advance notice of the strikes. But they said that they hope that the parents will understand, and they say that they're doing this for their children's future and, you know, the learning quality that they'll get. They feel that this strike action is necessary to improve things for children in the long run.
Anna in Leeds, thank you very much for updating us there, and glad we got through to you with all the background noise. And of course, we'll keep people updated with the situation on that teaching strike, the public sector. We'll keep you updated indeed on the latest strike in the private sector. Where's that? We'll be telling you in a moment. Stay with us. Latest headlines now with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. It's 1:33. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner, Mark Gordon, went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Speaking to The Independent, Miss Martin's father has spoken of his immense relief that his daughter's been found, but that it's very alarming that her baby remains missing. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to a male confinement. The Prime Minister says now is the time to come together as he praised the new Windsor framework during a visit to Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday alongside the President of the EU Commission. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing free trade across the UK. However, the deal does still allow for some oversight by the European Court of Justice. The DUP are now analysing the details, but the Prime Minister says it's a great building block.
Glad that the Windsor framework delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. It absolutely ensures the smooth flow of goods around our UK internal market. It protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, making sure everything is the same for people as it should be, and crucially, it safeguards sovereignty. That's what the Windsor framework delivers, and now is the time for everyone to study the detail and come together so we can move forward and build a positive future for Northern Ireland.
TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to GB News Live. We were updating you about the latest on the teachers' strikes in the public sector. Not just public sector, private sector workers too. Amazon workers on strike now in Coventry. The GMB union saying their industrial action taking place on March the 2nd as well, and a week between March the 13th and 17th too. Our reporter Jack Carson is there for us now. And Jack, certainly there have been a lot of these stories about people unhappy with their working conditions, rest breaks and so on. But is it about conditions or pay?
Well, good afternoon, Mark. Welcome here to the Amazon site in Coventry, where once again, for the second time, Amazon, through about 350 Amazon workers that belong to the GMB union, are walking out over, of course, pay and working conditions. I'm joined now by Stuart Richards, who's a senior organiser for the GMB. Stuart, What's changed in the month since your last strike here?
Well, the only thing that's really changed is the resolve of our members. Amazon still refuse to engage, discuss or have any acknowledgement of the issues our members here face. So what's happened is that they've become incredibly angry about what's happening. They've decided that they're going to take charge of the disputes. They've set out that we're going to be striking today. We'll be striking on Thursday, and then a full day of action, a full week of action beginning Monday the 13th. So effectively, if Amazon still continue to refuse, then we'll continue to escalate these disputes.
We're hearing a lot of stories around some of the conditions inside this centre and across Amazon centres. What are some of the things that the members here have to face as they go to work?
I think there's lots of issues, and if you start talking to some of the workers here, each one will come back with a different series of concerns that they've got. But one of the most fundamental things, if you go to work and you don't know the performance target that you're going to be measured against, if you aren't told throughout that day, but if you fail to meet that target, you're going to end up in trouble, potentially lose your job. That's a really serious issue, and that's what our members here face. They turn up for work, they have an algorithm that measures performance, that they don't know what that performance level is, they don't know what the target is, and effectively they're trying desperately to keep up with that, with a kind of culture of fear hanging over them, not sure whether they're going to end up losing their job if they fail to meet that.
But on the point of pay, Amazon say since 2018 there's been a 29% increase in the minimum hourly wage paid to Amazon employees. They say it's competitive. That's fair, isn't it, for this work?
Well, if you ask the workers, probably better than me, a couple of bits, they've lost a series of benefits over that period of time. So Amazon used to give workers shares, that's now been completely removed. They've taken over other benefits for them, and even the minimum wage has increased by 27%. The reality here is, from April, this site is going to be virtually a minimum wage employer. So for workers that go in there, work incredibly hard and generate a huge amount of profit for this company, they deserve better than minimum wage. And again, for Amazon to say that they're proud of that is a real slap in the face for these workers.
But looking across, this is only one site that's under dispute. What's the support like across Amazon sites across the country? Is this something that we could see escalate across the UK?
Again, each time we do this and then the members at Coventry take that step forward, we're seeing members in other workplaces other Amazon warehouses start to join us. We're seeing other members in other Amazon warehouses start to approach us and say, can we get involved in this? And the reality is, this dispute isn't settled for Amazon workers. It's likely that these disputes are going to spring up in different warehouses right across the UK. That's where we're going to be. And again, that should be an incentive for Amazon bosses to actually start to sit down, talk to GMB and actually try and resolve the concerns that their workforce has got.
OK, Stuart, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We heard it here. Unless Amazon start to come to the table and start to bring these negotiations to the GMB, this dispute looks like it will continue.
OK, so Amazon has to deliver to its own workers. Jack, thank you very much indeed for updating us there on that particular picket line. We'll follow that for you, as we will, of course, all the teachers' strikes today. But let's reflect now on what's been going on with Northern Ireland. It is called the Northern Ireland Protocol now. It seems to be the Windsor Framework. That's the new phrase of the day. Bit of reaction coming in as those political parties in Northern Ireland digest it. The Alliance Party leader Naomi Long just saying the framework, the deal, it should have been signed 4 years ago, saying the UK had a serious Prime Minister, at the time, she's saying. Following a meeting with Rishi Sunak earlier in County Antrim, she said, in terms of the trading arrangements between the UK and particularly Northern Ireland and the EU, we recognise this as a major step forward. But going on to say one disappointment is we've had to wait that 4 years, and it remains unclear how it will function in terms of the Stormont break and at what level the trigger will be set. Well, let's get more from Westminster. Tom Harwood is there, and of course intimation there about the role or non-role, as they might see it, of Boris Johnson. We've not heard a dicky bird from him, have we, Tom?
No, we haven't, and we're not expecting to hear anything from him, certainly this week. But equally, we haven't heard from a definitive position, I should say, from the DUP or the ERG either. This is a long and complicated agreement. The government published 16 documents on its website yesterday, a command paper, various legal documents as well. There is going to be a great deal of time taken to go over this this and indeed to look at the legal text that the European Union has published as well. I don't think we're expecting snap judgments from anyone. And yet, that being said, the mood music around this does seem to be very positive for the government. We heard there from the Alliance Party that this is something that they say should have been signed 4 years ago. To some extent, Brexiteers might be a little bit rolling their eyes at that, because some of the things that have been agreed now, this red lane, green lane situation, these were proposals that Brexiteers made back in 2017 and 2018 that the EU at that time said no to. Well, it does look like the EU has changed its position, has moved on a lot of these issues, and whether that was because they took Rishi Sunak more seriously or not, I suppose that's for history books to say, but it does seem that the EU has moved in a lot of these areas, and that is something that is to be remarked upon.
Yeah, and interesting, we're sort of sifting the reaction coming through from Northern Ireland, more from the Ulster Unionist leader Doug Beattie, basically saying there's no reason why the power-sharing institution could not be operating while the parties study the deal or the detail. If we drag this out for months, businesses will be sitting there not knowing whether they're coming or going. No point in dragging it out. I mean, clearly the pressure might be growing on the DUP.
Well, I think there will be pressure growing on the DUP, not least because there are elements of this deal, perhaps most of this deal, that could be implemented without the consent of the DUP, without the consent of the Northern Ireland Assembly. The elements, for example, this dual regulatory regime within Northern Ireland, the red lanes and the green lanes, all you need is the agreement of the UK government and the EU Commission as well to get that starting to be implemented. There are other elements, for example, this Stormont break, that will need the Assembly to be up and running to work. So that's an incentive there for the DUP to get stuck in through the lens of the government. But there are certainly many elements of this deal that actually don't need the DUP to get on board or even get it back into power sharing to enact. And I think that that's a message that businesses are receiving relatively well today in Northern Ireland. Of course, the Prime Minister is meeting with business leaders around Northern Ireland today, and that message that really quite quickly this sort of dual regulatory regime, this benefit of having British regulations allowed within Northern Ireland, but also European regulations concurrently existing there as well, this sort of best of both worlds situation, that is something that businesses could start taking advantage of in fairly short order.
Indeed. For the moment, thank you very much indeed, Tom, for bringing us the reaction in Westminster. And, of course, we'll update you as we get more from Belfast too. But the Prime Minister reflecting a little earlier on the state of the economy with the latest figures coming through on food inflation or groceries. Grocery price inflation reaching a new record of 17.1%, according to the latest figures, adding a potential £811 to the annual household grocery bill. Well, the prices are rising fastest with staples such as milk, eggs and margarine. That's according to the market insight group Kantar. Its latest data saying the 4 weeks to 19th of February represented the highest level of grocery inflation ever recorded. Let's get more, though. Economics and business editor Liam Halligan here with On the Money. Liam, I guess it won't be a surprise to those people who have gone to the shops trying to, particularly get this fresh fruit and veg at the moment with all the shortages, it pushing prices even higher. But, I mean, this is eye-watering, isn't it? 17.1%.
So the shortages we've seen, particularly in tomatoes and other salad, mainly due to weather conditions and the cost of heating greenhouses in particular, that's actually in the last week or 10 days, Mark. So these numbers from Kantar don't include that latest price surge. So these aren't official Office for National Statistics numbers, though they will preempt the official numbers. These are from a private sector market analytics company, very respected, called Kantar. And a lot of what's happening, Mark, with this 17.1% inflation, so during the 4 weeks to February the 19th, that period this year compared to the same period last year, the average basket was 17.1% more expensive. And as you said, if you bought exactly the same things, the average household would be paying £811 more per year for their basic groceries. But of course, people don't buy the same things. A lot of people are amending the way they shop. They're adapting.
Or where they shop.
They're going to discounters. There's a huge surge in own brand foodstuffs being bought. The likes of Waitrose are growing a lot less quickly than the likes of the discounters like Aldi and Lidl, where the focus is overwhelmingly on price. Though, of course, those discounters would say, understandably, that they still have very, very good quality as well. And a lot of this stems from the fact that Russia, Ukraine, they're major exporters of wheat, staples, grain, and particularly fertiliser.
Yeah, which the farmers have
fertiliser.
to use,
Russia has a load of potash, which is like a mineral that's used in fertiliser. They obviously have lots of gas, which is used to generate fertiliser. You can't get those bulk goods out of southern Ukraine. That's why fertiliser prices have gone up for farmers. Feedstock prices have gone up for farmers. Fuel prices have gone up for farmers. And also, farmers' financing costs have gone up when they borrow money in order to plant their crops to get the money back. So the question is, the supermarkets are competing with each other, so they're trying to give consumers the best possible deal to maintain their market share. But what the NFU would say, the likes of the National Farmers Union and other farmers who I talk to, I live in a rural area, Mark, I talked to farmers pretty much every weekend when I go to the market in my local town. Farmers are saying that supermarkets are squeezing them more and more and more. So the supermarkets are trying to maintain their margins, even though the actual basic cost of food has gone up.
And we had Mark Spencer, the food minister, meeting the supermarket bosses, of course, yesterday, after said the NFU saying we're sleepwalking into this food supply crisis. But, I mean, the other aspect is that it explains why so many of the unions are taking industrial action when they're trying to get their members a pay rise to cope with these increased costs. Now, it's interesting that on the bigger picture, we've got the IFS, Institute of Fiscal Studies. They've identified this figure that the government's found 30 billion down the back of the sofa, or at least they have to borrow 30 billion less.
That they would otherwise have
to borrow. And therefore saying, well, can't they do a deal? And actually, that the public would say, can't you do a deal and actually get some money to the unions and get things moving?
Well, this time last week, Mark, we had exactly this discussion when the Office for Budget Responsibility revealed its the outcomes for January on the public finances compared to their forecasts. And people like me did some sums and worked out that from April last year up until November last year, so a big chunk of that tax year, the Office of Budget Responsibility had overestimated the amount of money the government would have to borrow by 30 billion quid. And I said to you then, this is the kind of good news that Jeremy Hunt doesn't want, the Chancellor, because it puts him under exactly the pressure that the IFS is now talking about. He can afford to pay these public sector unions a lot more money. That's what they are saying. And we've heard today that we always knew some civil servants were going to be striking on budget day, March the 15th. But now we hear that some HMRC civil servants
33,000
are going to be striking as well. That puts it up 130, 140,000 civil servants. And they're not here to represent themselves. They would say they deserve a big pay rise and all the rest of it. That's what unions do, of course. Fair dues, I guess. But it strikes me as a taxpayer and a consumer that this budget on March the 15th is really, really important to the UK, because the last time we had a kind of fiscal event was the Liz Truss Kwasi Kwarteng budget, followed by...
What an event that was.
Followed by the announcement a couple of weeks later, which reversed a lot of it. We've had this kind of, tumultuous set of fiscal announcements that have caused instability on financial markets. This budget is really meant to be a return to stability, a return to normality. And it may be that the complex task of putting those numbers out in documents that are checked and checked and checked again so they're correct, if the civil servants aren't around to do that, the scope for errors and slip between cup and lip, if you like, really go up. And so just like a lot of the other unions in the private sector, the train drivers' unions and so on, the bus drivers' unions, they stand accused of timing their strikes for maximum sort of public inconvenience. You could accuse the civil servants of the same.
Yeah. new batteries for your calculator the 15th of March, I think. But we'll have all the latest.
It's all in my head.
On GB News Live. You're well. We shall get you the very latest on Budget Day. But let's reflect now on this news of a double rapist who changed gender while waiting to stand trial has today been jailed for 8 years. Isla Bryson attacked 2 women in Clydebank and Glasgow in 2016 and 2019, while known as Adam Graham. The judge today said that Bryson posed a high risk of reoffending and then would be supervised for 3 years after his release. The case, of course, sparked a heated debate over whether Bryson should be housed in a male or female prison after transitioning from a man to a woman. Let's get more with our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who's been hearing the sentencing at Edinburgh High Court. And certainly the High Court heard quite pointed remarks from the judge, Tony.
Yes, certainly after deliberating even further after a half-hour break this morning, presiding judge Lord Scott told Isla Bryson, "You see yourself as a victim in this situation, you are not." And certainly that set the tone for the rest of the sentencing this morning. As you mentioned there, 8 years in prison for Isla Bryson for the double rape, and a further 3 years for very, very close monitoring, I can imagine, because the judge is so concerned about her risk to the public following her release. We're now 5 weeks since the verdict, and Lord Scott had said prior that he wanted to take all the available time to him to make sure he understood the intricacies of this case. But certainly now his concern for the public seemed to outweigh everything else. He recorded that Bryson's, vehement denial of the crimes that she committed contributed to this sentence, as well as Bryson's baseless defence that the victims knew one another, and certainly, obviously, that wasn't taken into consideration by Lord Scott at all. And he went on to confirm, as we said, that she would be closely monitored inside and then outside of the prison. Bryson, of course, during the trial it came out that she had quite a disjointed childhood, and he recognised that vulnerability which lent later in life, also with a couple of neurodivergent or disorders. But certainly this will be a landmark day for Scotland.
Indeed. Tony, thank you for that. As we say, 8 years and then 3 years on licence, and we'll continue to reflect the reaction to that and, of course, where that sentence will be served. Coming up on GB News Live, stay with us. We'll have the latest from Brighton, that huge search underway for the missing baby after the mother and father were arrested in Brighton last night. All the details coming up for you shortly.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Another mostly cloudy day across the UK. Showers in places, but some brighter spells, especially for the likes of Western Scotland once again, where the sunshine will reappear, and for eventually some southern counties of England, as well as some western parts. But actually, a lot of cloud is feeding in from the east, from the North Sea. So frequent showers around some North Sea coasts, into the Pennines, the southern uplands, and a few showers making their way into the Midlands, as well as parts of Wales. And we've got this area of showers or longer spells of rain just clipping Kent, and it's going to stick there through much of the afternoon. It's going to feel cold in the wind coming off the North Sea, but actually temperatures not far from average, 7 to 10 Celsius. And the sunshine reappears there across Western Scotland, having seen the cloud fill in overnight. And that clear slot remains overnight, with a frost here, with temperatures in some sheltered parts of the Highlands dipping well below freezing. And the rain in the southeast tends to transfer westwards, so some showery activity coming into the southwest as well as Wales, leaving clear spells in the far southeast and a frost here. But elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover and further showers continuing. And after a frost-free start, actually temperatures are going to remain at around 5 to 9 degrees for much of the day. Some brighter spells coming in at times for northern and eastern England, but it's here where the showers will continue to pile through, drying up further west, and there'll be, well, plenty of sunny spells for western Scotland, some western and southwestern, as well as southern coasts of England and Wales. Through the night on Wednesday night, again, we'll see some clear spells towards the south as well as western Scotland. 1 or 2 clear spells for Northern Ireland, where we get the clear spells, temperatures dipping below freezing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and staying frost-free. Into the weekend, most places stay cloudy, with average temperatures turning cold in the far north.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Very good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock and you're with GB News Live. I'm Mark Longhurst, and coming up for you this afternoon, police say finding a baby is the priority of their search after missing couple Constance Martin and Mark Gordon were found in Brighton late last night. The baby, though, is still missing. Thought to have been just days old when the couple originally disappeared. This urgent search underway. We'll have the latest live from Brighton with our security editor Mark White, who's following the intensive police search. Have we finally made progress on that post-Brexit deal? Will the framework hold? Rishi Sunak in Northern Ireland to convince members of the DUP in particular that the trading arrangements are a breakthrough for Northern Ireland. The union is considering the deal's merits. But what does the nationalist community think? We'll be speaking to a local journalist in Belfast. And the United Nations exploring an idea to reflect sunlight back into space to urgently cool the planet's rapidly rising temperatures. Could it be a new hope to help combat the climate crisis? Still concerns over safety and viability, but the technology has the backing of dozens of scientists. We'll be hearing from the Independent's climate correspondents. And as ever, get in touch with us, gbviews at gbnews.uk, particularly, of course, if you're in Northern Ireland. Before that, latest news headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you, and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 2. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner, Mark Gordon, went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Speaking to The Independent, Miss Martin's father has spoken of his immense relief that his daughter's been found, but that it's very alarming that her baby remains missing. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to a male confinement. The Prime Minister says now is the time to come together as he praised the new Windsor framework during a visit of Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday alongside the EU Commissioner. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing free trade across the UK. The Northern Ireland Assembly would also be able to stop some EU laws affecting the flow of goods called the Stormont Break. Ulster Unionist leader Doug Beattie says the Stormont Break sounds good in theory, but he raises questions about its practicality. The Prime Minister says the UK government want to work with Stormont in this new deal.
If there's a significant EU law that comes along that will have lasting and significant impact on the everyday lives of people here in Northern Ireland, that the Assembly will be allowed to pull the emergency brake. And it's built on something called the Petition of Concern mechanism, which is a Good Friday Agreement institution, requires the support of 30 MLAs from 2 parties. And once that's done, to be crystal clear, the UK government then does have an unequivocal veto. And what I've said is that the UK government wants to sit down with the parties in Northern Ireland, the Assembly, to codify how the UK government would use that veto.
Thousands of teachers are striking across England and Wales for 3 days this week in their ongoing dispute over pay. The National Education Union says teachers are walking out in the north of England today, with the majority of schools restricting access for pupils or fully closing. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has called the strike action unforgivable, adding that children deserve to be in class, especially after the pandemic. Union members in the Midlands and eastern regions of England will join the picket line tomorrow, with more walkouts in Wales and the south of England on Thursday. Meanwhile, 33,000 civil servants are joining a public and commercial services union strike on the 15th of March, the day of the Chancellor's budget. Members of the PCS, which represents government departments, Border Force and the DVLA, will walk off the job. They'll join 100,000 civil servants already due to strike that day, alongside London Underground workers in Aslef in separate disputes. Teachers from the NEU in England and Wales are due to stage the final 2 days of walkouts also. Grocery price inflation has reached a new record high of 17.1%. Analyst Kantar says this means an average increase of £811 to yearly household shopping bills. Products such as milk, eggs and margarine have seen the fastest rise in costs. The impact of the vegetable and fruit shortages is not yet included in the new inflation figures. 3 energy companies are to bring a High Court challenge against the sale of collapsed company Bulb to Octopus Energy. Lawyers representing Scottish Power, British Gas and E.ON say there are serious public interest issues surrounding the deal and have questioned its lawfulness. They're trying to challenge 2 decisions by the Department for Enterprise, Energy and Industrial Strategy, who approved the takeover and increased a government loan to help with the transfer. Bulb went into administration at the end of 2021 with approximately 1.6 million customers on its books. Keen stargazers were treated to a second night of seeing the Northern Lights in the UK. Northern Scotland was the best place to view the aurora lights overnight. This was the view from the Isle of Skye. The phenomenon is a result of a solar storm. They'd previously been seen as far as Cambridgeshire the night before, but cloudy weather prevented a second chance. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Tamsin, thank you very much indeed. So let's update you on this huge search underway for that 2-month-old baby missing after the situation in Brighton, where Constance Martin and boyfriend Mark Gordon were arrested in the city last night. Sussex police now appealing to the public to search outbuildings and properties and to be vigilant while walking on open land between Brighton and Newhaven particularly. The couple were finally arrested at 9:30 last night after a tip-off from a member of the public. The baby, though, not with them. Let's get the very latest now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's there in Brighton. And Mark, we were saying earlier, this is a joint operation now between Sussex Police and the Metropolitan Police, who've been involved, of course, from the the early onset of this inquiry?
Yes, all morning we've been watching those operations from the Metropolitan Police, from Sussex Police and from the partners, of course, in Surrey Police as well, because they operate some joint crime sort of operations that the two forces operate together. And those officers from Surrey are here with their colleagues from Sussex. We've watched as they carried out searches off an allotment behind us. Huge area, actually, a few hundred yards from the bottom end of the allotments where I am right up to the top end of those allotments. And as well as that, there's wooded area around here. There's a nature reserve as well. All of these areas are being searched, and that search will fan out as they often do. If they don't find anything in the immediate sort of epicentre that they're looking at, they'll then move out. And what they will also do, as we've seen it by the fact that they've swept up the allotments and then back down, is they'll carry out a cursory search, if you like, and then perhaps at some stage a much more detailed forensic search, effectively when they're on their hands and knees going through items in areas of interest. But no sign yet, we understand, of the child, of course, or indeed where this couple were living, whether they were living here for any period of time. We simply don't know. Now, I can tell you that we are expecting a press briefing in about half an hour's time. It's not an on-camera briefing, but they should be able to give us some kind of an update of how these searches are going, whether this couple that are in custody at the moment have been cooperative. We were told earlier that they were not cooperative in giving information about the whereabouts of this child. So hopefully we'll get some more information on that. And of course, maybe some information on whether the police have actually now found where they were living around this area, Mark.
Yeah, and those reports that it's believed they may have had some kind of blue tent and had been sleeping rough, and those reports that they may have been seen in Newhaven, which is, about 12 miles along the coast of that Channel port. I mean, do we know if that search will extend further towards East Sussex later?
I think there's every possibility, if they don't find anything here, that they may then look in other places. And we know that there were multiple locations where this couple were in for a while, and at any point along the way they may have had a child with them or not had a child with them, and that's the difficulty, especially if the couple are not cooperating. What we know for sure is that on the 5th of January the vehicle that the couple were travelling in was found abandoned, apparently broken down on the hard shoulder of the M61 motorway near Bolton. A day later they had travelled, we're told, to Liverpool. And then after that, a day after that, they'd gone down to Essex, to Colchester and to the port of Harwich, before then travelling on to East London, where they were caught on CCTV a number of times in East London, before then going down to Sussex and Newhaven, as you say, Mark, an indication that they may have been spotted in Newhaven a bit more recently as well. And we just don't know really if that child that they believe was born either inside that car or very near that car a day or two before it was found abandoned, whether that child was actually with them throughout the subsequent days or not. That's what the detectives who are carrying out the interviews with this couple now are trying hopefully to establish. We may get more of an indication of where they are with those inquiries in about half an hour's time.
And, of course, the growing concern for that little baby's welfare, now 2 months old. But, Mark, for the moment, thank you for updating us. Back to you, of course, as we get more details from the police there. Let's now return to, not the Northern Ireland Protocol anymore. It seems it's the Windsor Framework, as it's been renamed. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, saying he wants to move forward when it was put to him today that much of his work was effectively undoing Boris Johnson's original deal. So has the Prime Minister achieved the impossible, striking a Brexit deal with Brussels over Northern Ireland, getting Brexit done? Well, the DUP yet to give its final all-important verdict, but early indications positive perhaps for the government. The Unionist Party's response more positive than many anticipated, with leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson giving a cautious welcome to the so-called Stormont break, part of that deal, saying that the party will act in a reasonable way. Well, the Prime Minister's been addressing business leaders at County Antrim earlier. This is what he had to say about the deal.
Protocol that was negotiated as it was being implemented was causing real challenges for people, for families, for businesses here in Northern Ireland. And in too many ways, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel that the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement that was so painstakingly negotiated and settled for almost a quarter of a century, that balance had been disrupted. And that's why I've spent a lot of time together with Chris and others working really hard to try and find a resolution on that thorny issue. And I'm really pleased. In fact, I'm over the moon that yesterday we managed to have a decisive breakthrough with our negotiations with the EU, reached agreement, the new Windsor Framework, that I think is an extraordinary positive step for Northern Ireland. And it represents, as the European Union President herself said, a historic moment for us to move forward and resolve some of the difficulties of the past.
Prime Minister speaking in Northern Ireland a little earlier. More reaction in a moment. Let's just update you with events in Wales, of course, with it being St David's Day tomorrow. And we've got the Prince and Princess of Wales here near Aberafon at the Brynawel Rehabilitation Centre near Pontyclun, which is part of their charitable foundation's new collaboration. And they've got their allotments to support mental health, a therapy garden, and in detail, I don't know if we can head back to those pictures, the Princess of Wales planting sweet William seeds, which brought a chuckle from the Prince, but they're clearly meeting well-wishers there with the Welsh flags flying ahead of St David's Day tomorrow. And the couple wearing daffodil pins too in their lapels with a host of engagements across South Wales, celebrating, of course, the patron saint of Wales. Kate having presented with a bunch of daffodils a little earlier. But the underlying message from this is that they are really wanting to help this message on mental health with rehabilitation, particularly for those with drink and drug problems. And the Royal Foundation talking about its work alongside Life at Number 27, which is a group with this horticultural therapy and mental health counselling providing a gardening mission, 6 gardens eventually being created across South Wales. But at the moment, the gardening gloves are off because they're shaking hands with all these well-wishers, seeing the, as he is now, Prince of Wales, as well as Duke of Cambridge, visiting the Principality. And, of course, the daffodils there still being held firmly by Kate, the national flower of Wales, with more celebrations to come tomorrow for St David's Day. Well, let's head back from Wales to Northern Ireland and that historic deal. And let's get the views now of journalist and commentator Amanda Ferguson, who's joining us. And Amanda, interesting that we've got the Alliance Party particularly coming out, you know, saying, well, this is something that could have been done 4 years ago and should have been done 4 years ago.
Well, we know this has been a complicated process since before the referendum even took place. There were warnings about how complicated and how difficult it was going to be with regards to Northern Ireland because of the unique position that Northern Ireland holds in the UK. But certainly the Prime Minister was in selling mode today in Northern Ireland, having some informal chats with some of the political parties. He was visiting the Coca-Cola plant in County Antrim and really said that he was over the moon with the deal, that he felt that it addressed all of the concerns that unionists have, but also that cross-community concerns that might have been present, and he feels that the EU and the UK...
We seem to have just lost you for the moment, Amanda. Are you still hearing us?
I am
Yes,
indeed.
yeah, we just lost the signal for a moment. Yeah, you're mentioning about selling the deal. I mean, it does seem to be being bought by some as well. I mean, thumbs up from certainly the Alliance Party and Sinn Féin for obvious reasons. But Ulster Unionist leader too, Doug Beattie, basically saying that it's disingenuous, as he said, for any political party to suggest it will take weeks or months to formulate a response, indicating to perhaps the DUP, get on with it.
Well, I think that we're going to have to wait to see how far into this process that the DUP want to see the outworkings of what the new arrangement is before it commits to it. We know that we have the Good Friday Agreement anniversary coming up in April, but we also have council elections coming up in May. So those are considerations that could well be in the mix. But I think that whenever you speak to all of the parties, they're all generally acknowledging that progress appears to have been made, but they do want to get into that fine granular detail of exactly what the legal text is going to say before they give their final verdict. But so really, while everyone's view is important and while the business community's view is important, and they have given it a seemingly positive welcome up to this point, we are really on the DUP watch to see what they make of it.
And in terms of that granular detail, is it what this Stormont break is? I.e., if you put your foot on that brake, does it actually stop anything?
Yes, well, it's one of the considerations. You know, the DUP throughout this have had the issue of the friction of trade, the democratic deficit, as they see it, and also about what they view as the constitutional harm. So it won't just be a cursory glance that the DUP will be having over this document. They've already said that they've got lawyers and custom experts looking at the detail, and there is a bit of a divergence of views within the DUP, which Sir Geoffrey Donaldson addressed this morning. He was questioned about the apparent mixed messages that are coming from the DUP. On one hand, him talking about significant progress, and on the other hand, perhaps some of the more hardline Brexiteer MPs within the DUP ruling it out, saying that on gut instinct, Ian Paisley said that it didn't cut the mustard and so on. So Sir Geoffrey said that the DUP would come to a collective decision, but wouldn't give any timescale on that. I think there's an eagerness amongst the media, amongst observers for this story to be wrapped up, but I think there's a while to go yet on this, and we don't have fully functioning government in the meantime.
So watch and wait. Amanda, as ever, thank you for bringing us your assessment there. But let's stay in Northern Ireland and head over to Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, who's in Belfast. And Darren, what's your assessment or take on how long this could take? I mean, particularly what Doug Beattie, the Ulster Unionist leader, is saying, look, you know, there's no reason to drag this out for months. And also saying no reason why power sharing can't get going while those discussions are ongoing.
Yeah, indeed, and it's something you and I have been talking about all afternoon, isn't it, Mark? This essence, this sense that as much for the DUP, this argument and this procrastination and this thought process and this consultation is about the protocol. It is also about trying to get the internal politics for them right here in Northern Ireland. Now, why do I say that? Well, first of all, they're absolutely determined not to be pushed on this deadline that effectively is in place around the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which is on April 10th. There's an expectation that there'll be a big celebration around that. Clearly, the British and Irish governments want Stormont to be restored. It must be said, I think the majority of people here in Northern Ireland want that to be the case as well. There is also an expectation that President Biden would come and visit. Clearly, it would not be a good look if Stormont was not restored by that stage, given the fact that it's at the centrepiece of the Good Friday Agreement. And then second of all, those local elections we were just talking about in May, and the DUP have to be very wary that they can get outflanked on this issue by more hardline unionists and loyalists who don't like the protocol at all. In fact, they think the entire thing should be scrapped, and they're conscious that they could get another bruising, if you like, in those local elections in May. And that is what Doug Beattie's referring to, this idea that the DUP may not make a decision on this for months and months to come. As for Rishi Sunak, though, he knows there's going to be a vote in the Commons. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And I think there is an element here where the government are at least publicly not going to say that this deal depends on the DUP, that they can push ahead and implement it, as long as it's not widely criticised either by the DUP or indeed some senior Conservative backbenchers. And at the moment, I think that's where we're at, Mark.
OK, and I was going to ask you on that about that symbiosis between the DUP and the ERG, this group of the hardline Brexiteers, particularly Mark Francois, who indicated that there would be no move by them until they knew what the DUP was going to do. Where does that leave Rishi Sunak in Westminster on this, particularly if there's going to be this vote?
So I think what's really interesting, and what is a change from what's happened in the past, is that we've not seen large numbers of MPs come out and immediately criticise this deal. In fact, I don't think any Conservative MP has openly criticised it. Many are holding their cards close to their chest, if you like. I think the DUP don't matter as much as they used to. Clearly, they don't hold the balance of power. I don't think they hold quite the sway within the Conservative Party they once did. Second of all, even those MPs that are sympathetic to the DUP just want to move on from Brexit. You know, they do not want this continual discussion. They do not want Westminster consumed by Brexit again. There's also a third point where I think the government's very aware of this, but so are some Conservative backbenchers, that if they want to solve other issues that needs the European Union, most notably the small boat crisis, which I would suggest has far more impact on the Conservatives' electoral kind of standing in the rest of the UK compared to Brexit, that they're going to need, particularly French cooperation on that.
Yeah.
And they do not want to, I think, upset the apple cart before they get that deal. And then the one thing that could change all that dynamic, though, I suppose, is one person, that's Boris Johnson. And again, that's quite volatile. We don't know what impact he could have on this. If he decides to come out against it, or to lay into it, or to try and rile up the DUP, that could carry more votes. But I think the sense today is that if there was a vote, Rishi Sunak would win, and he would win amongst his own backbenchers too.
OK, we'll wait and see, and of course get more reaction there in Belfast. Darren, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us here on GB News Live. Coming up, more strikes. Tens of thousands of teachers now starting 3 days of action. What does it mean for the kids in the classroom? And the plans to reflect sunlight back into space to help cool the planet. That's going to be some mirror. We'll be shining a light on that in a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go. But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to GB News Live. Now let's take our eyes skyward once more. We had those wonderful pictures, of course, about the northern lights that people are managing to see. Well, the United Nations, we're being told, exploring a new idea to reflect sunlight back into space, all in order to help cool the planet's rising temperatures. Commonly known as geoengineering, the technology not recommended to use just yet, but the UN has said that it may change that view as current global climate action is insufficient. It comes as more than 60 scientists have signed an open letter calling for further research into the technology, but warnings too over its safety and viability for those low and middle income countries. So it sounds as if it might be a bit expensive. Let's get now more from Donica McCarthy, climate columnist for The Independent. Donica, is it a giant mirror, maybe?
Well, there is one proposal to have a giant mirror, but what the United Nations is looking at is more at cloud seeding, spraying sulfates or sea spray into the clouds to reflect the sun back out into the atmosphere.
Now this is something that we remember the Russians perhaps used to do to try and help rainfall in areas. And a lot of environmentalists were saying, well, don't start mucking around with our natural ecosystems.
Well, the UN Environment Report has actually said the risks involved that we don't know what the consequences are significant. One possible outcome could be if we start spraying sulfates, which is an acid, into the clouds, is that it could actually start damaging the ozone layer, which would actually cause other significant impacts on the world climate. I think what the UN report really is saying is that we are now in the danger zone. We are looking at terrible threats to the planet if we don't act, terrible threats to the planet if we do this sort of geoengineering. So the real message is we need to take action now.
But is the answer really to create yet more acid rain, one wonders?
Well, I agree. I would prefer us not to be taking these risks, especially if the consequences are known for rainfall. If we disrupt the rainfall patterns around the globe, what happens to a country that's dependent on that cycle of hydrological rain? This is a serious risk with this. It's playing God with the atmosphere, and that's what we should be doing, is not playing God and actually reducing the fossil fuels. The problem is the UN has said the current trend looks like we'll be increasing fossil fuels by 10% by 2030, when we need desperately to be cutting by 45%.
And would the United Nations have the power or the wherewithal to actually define and actually decide this for the whole globe, effectively, I guess?
Very good question. There's a huge question around governance over such actions, because there is no legal framework for us to take this experiment. So why should, let's say, China launch huge amounts of sulfate into the atmosphere, which could cause devastation to the rainfall in India? The governance issues are not there. So what we need to be doing, as I keep saying, is we need to stop burning fossil fuels ASAP, move to a renewable energy economy, and put this behind us.
OK, very quick other thought. They've been looking at it for jet fuel, kerosene and so on, to try and provide another alternative. They don't seem to have found anything that could replace it at the moment.
Well, there are various fuels that can replace fossil fuels, but they come with their own problems, such as emitting water vapor in the stratosphere, which again is a global warming fuel. Fossil fuels aren't the only source of carbon emissions that actually reflect the sunshine back into retain sunshine in the earth, and so therefore we need to take account of those as well, such as methane and water vapor.
Right, no easy answers as ever. But Donica, thank you very much for taking us through all the latest research. We'll see and keep our eyes up to the sky. Thank you very much indeed. Now, school's out, literally, for many pupils across England and Wales. Tens of thousands of teachers taking 3 days of strike action, part of their dispute over pay. The majority with restricted access for pupils or fully closed, according to the National Education Union. While GMB workers at Amazon's fulfilment centre, as it's called in Coventry, staging a walkout there. Further industrial action planned March the 2nd and 1 week between March the 13th and 17th. Let's get more with Anna Riley, who I think is in Leeds, or at least you were there last time. But first, more from our Midlands reporter Jack Carson with those Amazon workers. And you were just updating us, Jack, that this, of course, is a month on, I think, from their original action.
That's right. So this is the second day of action here, where 350 members of the GMB union have walked out from the Amazon site here in Coventry. There's around 1,500 people that work at the site usually, and of course, as we heard from Stuart Richards, one of the senior organisers for the GMB earlier on, with the strike action that continues, more and more staff here are starting to inquire about how they can specifically get involved with the union. So support seems to be gathering a little bit it here. Certainly this morning at the change in shift times, there was around 200 people on the picket line. And just to give you an idea of some of the disruption this caused, we actually saw a lot of lorries this morning queued all the way back up to the A45 from the site here. Around some queues this morning were stretching as far as 3 miles because of course, the union members engaging with the people coming in to work this morning. And so you can see the kind of disruption that it's caused, but also the mobilisation from a lot of the staff that it's caused. Amazon, though, say that they offer competitive pay for their staff between £10.50 and £11.45 per hour. They say this represents a 29% increase in the minimum hourly wage paid to employees since 2018, along with, of course, they say benefits as well. But of course, the members here fighting for £15 per hour and also better working conditions. It's not just about the pay, it's the conditions that the workers are facing as well, whether it comes to uncomfortable footwear or also as well the kind of the timetables and day-to-day targets that they're given. That this is what they're fighting for here at the centre.
Jack, thank you very much indeed for that. The latest snapshot in the private sector. What about the public sector? Let's join Anna, who's been with the teachers on the picket line there. Perhaps it's not just about comfortable footwear. It's the whole, some 10 years, they say, that they've had below inflation pay increases.
Yes, that's it. There's been a rally that's been held here in Leeds, and there's also been a march around the city centre. Hundreds of teachers turned out from 15 different regional NEU branches, and they're saying, yes, it is about pay. You know, we've heard that last year teachers did get a 5% pay rise, but the union have said that when you take into account inflation, when you take into account the cost of living, that's just not enough money for teachers. And they're also saying it's about the conditions. They're saying that they've got a recruitment crisis at the moment in teaching, and that this is impacting the pupils and the learning as well, because teachers are feeling stressed, they're getting burnt out, and then pupils aren't getting the standard of education that they should be getting as a result of that. We know that about 85% of schools are closed due to the strike action, and there'll be many pupils having to be looked after by their parents today due to these closures.
Yeah. Anna, thank you for that. And Leeds, Jack, thanks for Coventry as well. Both private and public sector stoppages today. Of course, we'll keep you updated. Coming up, we'll be assessing why your grocery bill is getting ever higher and what can be done about it. First, an update on all the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. It's 2:34. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. A major search is underway for a newborn baby after a missing couple were arrested in Brighton last night. Constance Martin and her partner Mark Gordon went missing in early January, sparking a major manhunt to find the couple and their child. Sussex police, who've arrested the pair on suspicion of child neglect, are still searching for the baby, who was thought to be just days old when they disappeared. Speaking to The Independent, Miss Martin's father has spoken of his immense relief that his daughter's been found, but that it is very alarming that her baby remains missing. Transgender rapist Isla Bryson has been jailed for 8 years after being found guilty of raping 2 women while still a man. The 31-year-old was convicted of the 2 rapes last month. The crimes took place in 2016 and 2019, whilst Bryson was still a man known as Adam Graham. The case caused controversy when Bryson was housed in an all-female prison, but has since been moved to male confinement. The Prime Minister says now is the time to come together as he praised the new Windsor framework during a visit to Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak struck a new post-Brexit trade deal yesterday alongside the President of the EU Commission. He said it would deliver smooth-flowing free trade across the UK. The deal still allows for some oversight by the European Court of Justice, and the DUP are now analysing the details. The Prime Minister says the deal's a great building block.
Glad that the Windsor framework delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. It absolutely ensures the smooth flow of goods around our UK internal market. It protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, making sure everything is the same for people as it should be, and crucially, it safeguards sovereignty. That's what the Windsor Framework delivers, and now is the time for everyone to study the detail and come together so we can move forward and build a positive future for Northern Ireland.
TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's bring you a bit of breaking news here on GB News Live. We're bringing the pictures of the Prince and Princess of Wales and that visit to the Principality ahead of St David's Day, of course, tomorrow. We're now learning from Kensington Palace that the Prince of Wales has become royal patron of the Wales Air Ambulance charity, revealed just before he goes to visit the charity's headquarters in Llanelli a little later this afternoon. The first Welsh patronage to be announced for William since given the title of Prince of Wales by the King. The charity founded back in 2001. And, of course, the significance, you remember that William was an air ambulance pilot for the East Anglian Air Ambulance Service and a helicopter pilot with RAF Search and Rescue in Anglesey up in North Wales. So that news just coming through. Now, we've been updating you with the weather. Warnings here about snow on the way. It's already arrived in Mallorca. Yes, that popular holiday destination for us Brits, known for its roasting temperatures and sunny beaches. Not today. These are the scenes that the Spanish authorities are dealing with. They've issued a red alert, they say. Valdemossa, particularly the blanket of snow. Temperatures dropping to -2 Celsius after Storm Juliet hit the Balearics over the weekend. Spain's meteorological agency, IMET, warning of a further 16 inches of snow to come. It's expected to fall, we're told, in the next 24 hours. So much for spring. We'll keep you updated on that, especially if you're wanting a quick holiday break. Perhaps not quite at the moment. Now, let's bring you the latest on the economy and the price of living crisis. It's still a crisis, it seems. Consumers having to dig deep because grocery price inflation has surged again. It's now up 17.1%, adding some £811 to your annual grocery bill, according to the latest estimates. Prices rising fastest with milk, eggs, margarine, according to the market insight group Kantar, saying their latest data for the 4 weeks to 19th of February, representing the highest level of grocery inflation ever recorded. Let's get more with our economics and business editor, Liam Hannigan, with On the Money. More on that in a moment, Liam, but first some breaking news. Jeremy Hunt's found a bit more money down the back of his sofa.
So this is the ongoing pre-budget rumblings. The budget, of course, is on the 15th of March. We might not get the documents because most of the civil service
They're going to be on
strike.
Yeah.
Maybe, I tell you what, you and I go on strike on budget day.
Oh, now there's a thought, yeah.
So, a lot of people were predicting the UK would go into recession just a few weeks ago. Some of us were saying they were seeing green shoots, and it wasn't nearly as bad as the Office for Budget Responsibility was predicting. It turns out that is now the case. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies, no less, has weighed in, that august independent think tank.
Highly regarded.
And the IFS is saying not only do they think that the budget deficit will be 30 billion less than the OBR says last year, they think it will be another 20 or so billion less next year, 23-24, so from this April to the following April. And so that's 56 billion in total, and that piles the pressure on Jeremy Hunt.
Right.
Not only will the likes of the public sector unions say you can now afford to pay us more, nurses, teachers, the rail unions will say you can afford to intervene, government, and give the railway more subsidies. The train operating companies can pay us a little bit more. You're also now going to get the business lobby, small businesses and big businesses saying,
corporation tax.
Do we really need to raise corporation tax? As some of us have been saying they wouldn't do, from 19 to 25%. That is currently the law, Mark. It's going to go up from 19 to 25% in April, unless Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt on Budget Day, March the 15th, change it. Now, since I started talking about this, we've had some really big hitters weighing in on this debate. The kind of companies that don't usually get political. So you've had AstraZeneca,
drugs company,
saying that they're going to put this new headquarters that they're building, not in London, not in the UK, but in the Republic of Ireland. Because in Dublin, they've got a 12.5% rate of corporation tax compared to 19 now, going up to 25. You've had BT saying, do we really need to raise corporation tax? You've even had the CBI. They're pretty herbivorous most of the time, the Confederation of British Industry. They don't like to make trouble for the government because they need their relationship with the government. So it's not just Tory backbenchers, it's not just gobby journalists like me, it's now business thoroughbreds saying do not raise corporation tax.
What else could Jeremy Hunt do with 56 billion? Because, of course, the temptation would be to have some kind of tax giveaway before a general election in next year's budget.
It's not going to happen, but a penny off income tax costs about 5 billion quid. So you could take 10p off income tax across the board. Imagine, wow. Liz Truss would be going completely bananas.
I told you so.
She'd be waving her handbag around on the backbenches. That's not going to happen, but that's the scale of the amount of money. 56 billion, that's getting on for what we spend on schools every year. It's a big chunk of change.
Right. However, let's reflect that the IFS, and as you're saying, you know, they're treated as honest brokers, is also saying, pointing to the Bank of England forecast, that medium-term growth, i.e. further down the line, the outlook may have actually deteriorated. So even though perhaps the sums are looking slightly better at the moment, it's not to say that in a year or two, you know, things are going to start getting tight again.
Look, the economists, we're not called dismal scientists for nothing, are we? I'm not saying that the IFS are wrong. It's just the IFS, they don't, you know, they're not known for their insights into macroeconomic forecasting. What they are known for their insights into, and they're the best at this, is looking at individual tax policies and saying how much they're going to cost.
Hence, fiscal studies.
Analysing the public finances, where they currently are. They're an amazing organisation. No, you know, almost no country in the world has something like the IFS, which is so trusted. But they're not really known for their macroeconomic forecasting. Frankly, Mark, who knows?
OK.
Will China completely come out of lockdown and will, you know...
Will Ukraine still be at war?
Will it boom? Will the US stop raising interest rates? Will the world's biggest economy boom? Will there be another real deterioration in the economic war between the West and Russia? We don't know any of those things.
Right.
What we do know is that the public finances, as we speak, are 30 billion better off than we thought they would be this time just a few months ago.
Right. We're just getting a bit of news coming through about Argos, which basically is a division of Sainsbury's. They're saying it plans to close 2 depots over the next 3 years in a move that will hit 1,400 jobs. So let's just point that up. You know, it ain't all roses out there. And, of course, we're just talking about earlier the food prices, grocery inflation, which is hitting people in the pocket directly, 17.1% inflation.
Argos is, of course, one of those staples of the high street. You and I would go to Argos when we were kids, right, with those little pens, and you'd fill them in and...
hand your sheet
over.
Yeah,
somebody from a room you couldn't see would bring you your...
toaster.
Games console or your VacMaster or whatever it was. But in the end, you know, if you can buy what you want on the net and Amazon can deliver it, why do you need to go to Argos? I'm not saying that the store hasn't got a future, but clearly this is not good news for Argos. And they do tend to be quite labour-intensive depots, and they do tend to be sort of, you know, they hold up high streets in some parts of the country. So this isn't good news. And in terms of food inflation, so during the 4 weeks up until February the 19th, if you compare that 4-week period up to February the 19th with the same 4-year period in 2022, a basket of food is 17.1% more, according to Kantar, who are a market
and
analyst
basics,
company.
milk, pasta, all the things all that you want in
so
the
I've
public.
actually been on to Kantar. I mean, this is an organisation that sells its data, right? I mean, that's what it does for a living, and it makes a very good living. And I'm saying, come on, I'm Liam Halligan, I'm from GB News. Give us a little bit more insight. Let's break down this 17.1% for me.
And their response was?
And they won't give me the data. All they'll say is that it's led by milk and pasta. But what I know from previous surveys that I've seen, quite up to the minute, that we know that a half-kilogram bag of pasta has gone up from 50p before the war to 95p now. Those prices of pasta, of bread, they may actually come down because wheat prices are artificially elevated during this war, because Russia, of course, is a major wheat exporter.
Yeah, although... you know, tomatoes, salad crops, who knows what's going to happen in the next month. Anyway, Liam, for the moment, we'll let you get back on the phone. Remind them who you are. Now, we've been covering Brexit breakthrough, or the Windsor framework, as it's known today. Let's get more from Belfast with our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, who's been updating us from Stormont. But you've gone back out into the countryside there to find what people are making as they sort of dismantle all the details, Dougie.
Indeed, Mark, and in fact I'm in a little town called Cumber. Why here? Well, this is where, if the DUP take this deal, this is where they're going to have to sell it, in little towns like this. And Rishi Sunak, we now know why he didn't let the DUP or ERG have sight of this deal beforehand. He's out of the starting blocks this morning, out selling his dream into the Coca-Cola company in Lisburn, and doing quite a good job, it must be said, of showing people exactly the good parts of the deal. The problem being is, of course, he hasn't said too much about the bad parts of the deal, and that's starting to appear this morning. There's things like hundreds of EU laws will still apply. There is no dual regularity, and EU rules over animal and plants will still apply inside Northern Ireland. So it still is very much held inside the single market. Article 6 Acts of the Union, well, they are still in suspension. That was a red line for the DUP. And things like labelling of food that is only for Northern Ireland, not to go into the Republic of Ireland. That was also said by many food manufacturers that wasn't really a good idea, because there isn't enough people in Northern Ireland. You can imagine printing labels for some food and then it appearing in somewhere else. So that also makes it a little bit dear. And the handbrake, this is the biggest thing that the politicians are looking at, the Stormont brake as they call it. Really, when you start to look into it, politicians are saying to me, it's too difficult, because Stormont may pull the handbrake, but then it's up to Westminster to do something about it. And judging what has happened since the initial protocol, it has caused a few problems. And the thing about people of Northern Ireland is they're pretty straight people. And as much as this actually might be a good deal, I think the DUP might have actually went for this with a bit of tinkering around the edges. But the fact that so much has been hidden in it may actually make it worse, that the deal's a better deal, but the parcelling on it has maybe put people off. So we wait to see over the next few days where the DUP is going to go with this. But the more that comes out that is being hidden, and as much as Rishi is running trying to sell it, I think there's more damage being done.
OK, so perhaps not there quite yet, despite what we were hearing from Rishi Sunak earlier. Doogie, thank you indeed for that. Let's just bring you a bit more breaking news coming through. This is on the strikes, because now we're being told BBC journalists have voted overwhelmingly in favour of strike action in a dispute over planned changes to local radio programming. Now, in October, the BBC proposed they share more content and broadcast less programming unique to the areas, which, of course, the whole point of local radio. So programming before 2 p.m. and afternoon across England shared between 39 local radio stations. So the NUJ, the National Union of Journalists, warning that it will lead to loss of posts, with journalists having to reapply for their own jobs. So it appears that they will be undertaking now some kind of industrial action. We'll update you as we get more on that. Now, we were talking to Liam a moment ago about the grocery inflation and prices at an all-time high. But, of course, goods not just getting more expensive, short supply too. Those are the pictures we're getting from all these supermarkets. Tomatoes, cucumbers, salad, peppers, they're just not coming through. So could we perhaps find an answer in weaning ourselves off perfect produce and embracing all that wonky veg? Well, we're joined now by James Eade, founder of Earth and Wheat, which markets, indeed, wonky fruit, veg and bread. I'm not quite sure what wonky bread would look like, James. However, let's just reflect that maybe we are having to, going to change our shopping and eating habits.
That's right. Good afternoon. Extreme weather in Spain and North Africa has caused stunted growth in vegetables, which has ended up making it wonky and essentially the wrong shape, and people aren't used to that. There is stock available of that produce. However, it's obviously not in the supermarkets, mainly because of the increased price to bring it to the UK.
Yeah, and have we got perhaps a little bit... or I won't say self-indulgent, but the fact that we expect salad all year round, when, of course, in the old days, you used to eat seasonal produce. And even though there's been a bit of a kickback against Therese Coffey suggesting we all eat turnips, clearly there is an argument about eating something that's produced domestically at that time of year.
Exactly. Seasonal vegetables are seasonal for that reason. They're naturally occurring produce, which is why it's not always going to be perfect as well. It needs to be planned. It needs to be forecasted, and many farmers recently haven't produced over the forecast in afraid that they wouldn't be able to sell it, and now we're in a situation where we have shortages in the supermarkets.
Yeah, Mark Spencer, the food minister, met the supermarkets yesterday. What's your assessment? I mean, is it the fact that, as the NFU says, they've been warning about this food supply problem for some time, or is it that the supermarkets perhaps thought that they could just fill their shelves from Morocco and Spain and other areas, Egypt, even Turkey, and they've been caught short by this weather problem?
That could certainly be the case. I mean, I understand the position of supermarkets to not want to increase prices for the consumer, so that many supermarkets and retailers haven't purchased at the inflated cost due to fertilizer increases, labour increases and gas price increases.
Yeah.
And they've gone to Spain and Morocco, but the severe weather has meant that they weren't able to bring that over because of the lack of supply.
Now, the argument, of course, about the domestically produced veg and products is that it will be more expensive because we've got to have the polytunnels and the greenhouses, they've got to be heated. But would wonky veg actually be cheaper, that we don't have to have the perfect product, if you like, if people change their perception?
Exactly. Wonky produce, so wonky bread, wonky vegetables, is just as tasty as it would be. It's just as fresh as it would be. It's just not quite the right shape or size. And Earth and Wheat delivers it fresh to people's houses with free delivery. So when you balance out the cost of going to the supermarket and the labour of having to yourself choose what produce to buy, it balances out.
Yeah. OK, well, James, thank you very much indeed for that. And, of course, everyone will be looking towards the shelves to try and find something and find the money to pay for it. 17.1% inflation. But, James, thank you very much for that. More coming up. We'll have an update on that search in Brighton for the missing baby. Stay with us here on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here with the latest forecast from the Met Office. Cloudy for many of us during the rest of the day, with showers fairly widespread across the UK, but also some sunny spells. High pressure is in charge, but it's not keeping things entirely dry and sunny. It is bringing a feed of cloudy and showery conditions in from the North Sea. And also we've got this little feature, an occluded front, bringing some more persistent rain to Kent. Now that will move its way westwards and southwestwards through the evening. It will bring an uptick in showers across southwest England as well as Wales, but the showers will thin across eastern England later. And there'll be plenty of dry weather for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The clearest skies will be across western Scotland, and then later in the night, the far southeast of England once that feature clears through. It's in these areas where we'll see a frost as we begin Wednesday, but otherwise the cloudy skies will prevent a frost. Temperatures will stay at 3 to 5 Celsius. Further showers coming through on Wednesday, especially for northern and central England, southeast Scotland as well. 1 or 2 showers will reach parts of Wales and the southwest, but increasingly the cloud will break up. Sunny spells coming through in the south, the west and especially western Scotland. Temperatures up at 7 to 10 Celsius, but feeling more like 3 or 4 on that North Sea coast with the breeze coming in from the northeast. Now the showers will become fewer and a bit more scattered on Wednesday night. And that means as we head into Thursday, a greater chance of clear spells developing and a frost, especially in the south of England, as well as western Scotland once again. Temperatures where we keep the cloud, though, up at 3, 4, 5 Celsius. But Thursday, I think, will be less showery on the whole compared with the last few days. There'll be a bit of sunshine coming through across southern and western fringes, northern and western Scotland, and increasingly by the afternoon, bright skies for many. Friday also looks mostly dry and bright. Saturday likewise, but by then
it's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, news fans. It's Patrick Christie's here on GB News. Now, on the show, has Rishi Sunak's Brexit breakthrough shattered Boris Johnson's legacy? Has he accidentally opened the door to Britain rejoining the EU, or has he knocked it clean out of the park? We're live on the scene as police in Brighton search for a baby after an aristocrat and her lover were found by police after weeks of hunting for them. Drag queens in schools. Should kids be getting told there are 73 genders by a man in drag? And what about teachers telling them all about sexual acts? Has the world gone completely bonkers? Let kids be kids, eh? Was COVID racist? The COVID-19 inquiry is looking at whether or not racism could be to blame for so many people from ethnic minority backgrounds dying or falling seriously ill. And Jeremy Hunt has been given an extra £56 billion to play with in the budget. Jeremy Hunt certainly does have a massive package there, doesn't he? Where should that money go to? But right, get on to me, people. gbviews@gbnews.uk and answer these two questions. Has Sunak's deal damaged Boris Johnson's legacy, do you think? And should there be drag queens in schools? gbviews@gbnews.uk. But now it's the latest headlines with Tamsin Roberts.